first today?
Undercover red.
Okay. So gentlemen, once, why don't we have, I'll give you a couple minutes, it's something we're going to talk about, obviously on the record. That's how we provide to the jury. That should give you enough time to switch everything around. All rise on jury. No. Yes. Yes, you see right out of it?
Yes.
Okay. So just for the purposes of the record, the media folks have already been in compliance with that, and it's greatly appreciated. The court has been more relative for person CHS individuals, and everybody is in compliance with that. Thank you. We'll stand up. Before you get seated, just stop and raise your right hand. You swear that the testimony you're about to provide is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Okay, go ahead and have a seat for me. And for the next trial, I asked you to tell us your full name, but for the purpose of this trial, will be identified as UC Red, or Special Agent Red. So that's how.
Thank you, Sharon.
Mr. Walton, go ahead.
Thank you, Judge. Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Can you introduce yourself to the ladies and gentlemen on the jury?
Good morning. My name is Tim. I'm a special agent with the FBI.
Hey, Tim, let's talk a little bit about how long you've been at the FBI. When did you join service there?
I joined the FBI in 2009.
Prior to that, do you have any military experience?
Yes, sir. I was in the U.S. Army from 99 to 2002.
Okay, and just briefly, give us an idea of what you did for the U.S. Army.
I served as an infantryman in the Army.
I'm sorry.
Infantryman.
And we got to keep our voice up so that everybody can hear us. Both, think of the far corner of the room. You can think of that. Tell us a little bit about your experience in the FBI and what you've done since 2009.
After the academy, I went to Indianapolis. I served on the Joint Terrorism Task Force for 3 or 4 years. Following the Joint Terrorism Task Force, I moved to the Safe Streets Task Force and worked narcotics violations for the next approximately 5 or 6 years. Following that, I served as the SWAT senior team leader for the Indianapolis division and the primary firearms instructor for the Indianapolis division as well.
Okay. Tell us, if you will, since your service in the FBI, have you gotten any specialized training for undercover work?
Yes, sir. I have attended the 2-week certification course for the undercover program, and then also a advanced DT undercover course as well.
Okay, and when you say DT, what does that mean?
Domestic terrorism course.
Okay. So you've operated in an undercover capacity before this case, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let's turn, if we could, to this particular investigation. Can you tell ladies and gentlemen of the jury how you got involved in it?
Yes, sir. It was May of 2020. I was at home on a Saturday mowing my lawn and received a phone call from the undercover coordinator from the Detroit division, who was a friend of mine. He asked if I would be available to assist him with a case that was kind of progressing through the Detroit division, and it looked like it was going to be heading towards an undercover operation. I said I would be willing to help, and that's how we got started.
Okay, and this, I think you said, was May of 2020?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Kind of moving forward, did there come a time that you actually came to Michigan and met with anybody?
Yes, sir. In August of 2020, I came to Flint, to the Flint Resident Agency. I met with a couple of agents there, along with the CHS Dan. The purpose of that meeting was to build rapport with Dan, get to know him, so that he and I could establish a story as to how we met and how we knew each other. Okay.
The jury's already heard from Undercover Mark and has learned a little bit about the legend, if you will. What was your legend in terms of, coming to this investigation?
The legend was that Dan and I had met through our service in the military, that we were both in the Army at the same time, not in the same unit, but that we were deployed to Iraq at the same time. And through our service in Iraq, had met each other there, had remained in close contact, and became friends through our time there.
Okay. In terms of the reason for coming to Michigan and meeting Dan, I mean, what was the long-term plan in terms of how you were going to move into the investigation?
The plan was to have Dan introduce me. So Dan would be introducing me to the members of the Wolverine Watchmen and the militia members involved there.
Okay. Were you going to bring any special expertise to the equation?
So the plan that had really the militia needed a person that had explosives knowledge. And so in an effort by the case team to get ahead of that and sort of take control of that situation, meaning that they didn't want an unknown person to come in with explosives knowledge. So my story was, through my military experience, I had knowledge of explosives, and that's what I brought to the equation.
Okay. I mean, was also in terms of, did you market the ability to actually get explosives?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Through my story, post-military, I had access to individuals who had access to explosives. My legend was that I was a tactical trainer, and one of my clients through the mining industry had access to commercial grade explosives.
Were you ever going to give real explosives to anybody involved in the investigation?
No, absolutely not.
Okay. Does this give, the investigation some control?
Yes, absolutely. Again, it was my understanding at this point in the investigation that members of the militia were actively looking for someone that had access to explosives. And so we were trying to fill that void so that we had control over whether or not they would actually receive those explosives.
Okay. Let's move forward in time to the month of September of 2020. Did you come to Michigan that month?
I did.
Would you have been in Michigan on the 12th and 13th of September?
Yes, sir, I was.
Tell the jury where you came to.
On the 12th, which was a Saturday of September, I came to Cadillac, Michigan. There was a large Walmart there. There I met CHS Dan, Mr. Adam Fox, and UC Mark were all there at the parking lot at about 12 o'clock. They were meeting me there to basically usher us to Luther, to the field training exercise site, or the training site that was going to be home for the next couple of days for the event that was taking place that weekend.
Is this the point in time when you were going to be introduced by Dan personally?
Yes, it was.
Okay, first time?
Yes.
Only time?
Correct.
Okay. So you're at the Walmart. You told us who's there. Do you troop into Luther?
We do.
Okay. About what time did you arrive in Luther that day?
It was about 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
And what was going on when you got there?
Upon arrival, there was a large meeting. So this meeting involved everybody that was there that weekend. That meeting was led by, for the most part, Mr. Barry Croft. There's a lot of talk about operational security, things that should or should not be taking place that weekend, to remind mindful that there might be people there listening and to be careful with what was said. They talked about the training venue. There was going to be close quarters combat training. There was going to be medical training, weapons manipulation training, things of that nature.
Tell us a little bit more about the close quarters combat training. What does that involve?
That is training involving one or more persons entering and clearing a facility. So at that particular site, there was a mock-up. They used 3 walls of tires and some tarps to mock up a building so that the individuals there, both through a dry fire exercise and then a live fire exercise, could enter and clear this facility of any enemy targets, really is what it comes down to.
Okay. While you were there on the property, did you meet anybody by the name of William Null?
Yes, I did.
You see him in court today?
Yes, sir.
Can you identify him first?
He's at the table behind you.
Objection to the identification, Your Honor.
Did you meet anybody by the name of Michael Null?
Yes, sir.
And can you identify him for us, please?
He's at the table to my right.
Okay.
No objection.
And at any time during the weekend, did you meet anybody by the name of Eric Molitor?
I did, sir.
Can you point that person out?
He's here to my right.
Okay. In terms of when you met William Null, I'm sorry. Thank you, Judge. In terms of when you arrived there, how soon was it excuse me, before you met Mr. William Knoll?
I would say within the first hour or two,
Okay. And how about Michael Knoll?
same.
When you met them, were they together or were they separated?
When I first met them, I believe they were together.
Okay. And in terms of Mr. Molitor, how long were you there before you met him?
It was probably a bit longer than that, maybe the 3-hour mark.
Okay.
When I met them.
In terms of the training on Saturday, this close quarters combat drill with the tarps and the mock-up you were talking about, did either William Knoll or Michael Knoll go through that?
Both of them did so.
Okay. How about Mr. Molitor? Did you see him go through it on Saturday?
No, I did not.
Okay. While you were there Saturday, I mean, you're being brought in as the explosives guy, right?
Yes, sir.
Did you ever have any conversation with Mr. Fox about explosives?
I did.
Okay, when did that happen?
That was mid-afternoon, probably mid-afternoon towards evening. I was pulled aside by Mr. Fox, Mr. Croft, a few others asked to step aside from the close quarters combat training. We walked down a hill and had a small gathering where I showed them 2 or 3 videos of explosives.
Okay. Tell the ladies and gentlemen on the jury why you showed the videos versus bringing real explosives. I mean, is this to bolster your credibility?
It's certainly to bolster credibility, but it's also to make sure that everything is safe. We don't want to bring real explosives to something like this, obviously. We're not trying to get ourselves or anyone else hurt. But coming in as the explosives expert, I had to demonstrate the fact that I had access to these. And I showed a video that included an SUV being blown up and then also some explosives basically midair on a stick or a pole, rather, also blown up.
Okay. And I'm sorry, maybe I already asked you this, but who was there for that meeting?
That was myself, Mr. Fox, Mr. Croft, UC Mark was there, CHS Steve was there. Jenny was also there for at least the first portion of that meeting.
Okay. Tell the ladies and gentlemen on the jury what UC Jenny did during the showing of these videos.
She left very abruptly, very quickly, went back up the hill. She was obviously very panicked by the situation. I found out later that she made a phone call basically stating that someone was there that had access to explosives, and she was very upset by this.
The phone call that she made to whom?
To her handler.
Okay. All right. How long are you at the camp before you leave it that day on Saturday?
I would say I was there about 7 hours or so.
Okay. And about what time do you leave?
About 8 o'clock at night.
And what's the purpose of your departure?
So at that point, I didn't necessarily know the purpose of my departure. I wasn't made aware of what the purpose was until a bit later, but I ride with CHS Dan. We depart Luther. We drive down to Big Rapids where we meet up with several other folks to include Mr. Croft. Had a quick bite to eat there. We drive back to Cadillac where we meet up with UC Mark, Mr. Fox, the Knoll brothers. And it was at that point that Mr. Fox told me we were going to be conducting a nighttime surveillance of the Michigan governor's residence in Elk Rapids with the purpose of planning an attack or a kidnapping of the governor.
Okay. And in terms of the defendants or any of the defendants at Walmart?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Which ones?
The Knoll brothers were.
Okay. And Mr. Molitor was not, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. In terms of how the Knoll brothers are getting around that evening, well, strike that. After you get briefed there at the Walmart, where does the group go?
Following the Walmart in Cadillac, we drive to Elk Rapids. We drive to a gas station there on the south end of town.
Okay.
When we arrive at the gas station, Mr. Fox feels like it's too bright because of the lights there. It's still a business that's being actively used by customers. And so he makes the call to move across the street to an AMVETS post where there were no lights. So it was dark and the parking lot was secluded. We move across the street. There's 3 vehicles at this point. I'm in one of those vehicles. And Adam Fox begins to kind of delineate taskings as at this point for the night.
Tell us about that.
He basically assigns groups of individuals to these 3 cars. So in one car, it was myself, CHS Dan, Mr. Croft, Mr. Fox, and CHS Steve. In another vehicle, it was the Knoll brothers, UC Mark. And then in the last vehicle, Mr. Higgins and Ty Garvin were in that vehicle. We were assigned tasks per vehicle. So my vehicle was going to be the vehicle going to the boat launch to help identify where the governor's house was from the angle of the boat launch. Mr. Higgins' vehicle was going to be utilized as sort of the marking vehicle. That vehicle was driving the street that the governor's residence was on. And then the final vehicle that had UC Mark and the Knoll brothers, that vehicle was sort of a spotter vehicle, if you will, a vehicle to drive around and conduct operational security to make sure nobody was being followed or there weren't vehicles out sort of seeing what we were doing.
Do you have any question about what you were doing that night or what the plan was?
No, sir.
Okay. Can you pull up 210 for me, please, Adam? If you can turn around, Tim, and take a look at the picture that's being displayed there. That's exhibit number 210. Does that look familiar to you?
Yes, sir.
And in terms of this rally point in Elk Rapids, is it displayed anywhere on this photograph?
It is. Our initial meet point was at the foreground of this photo in the mobile parking lot, and then we moved. That's the AMVETS there, the white building. So we initially parked here. This is the AMVETS post, and we moved right over here again to just avoid being seen and drawing attention.
Okay. In terms of the plan and the assignments, the vehicle that you're in, who are you in there with?
That was myself, CHS Dan, Mr. Fox, Mr. Croft, and CHS Steve.
Okay, let's back out just a little bit and go back to either the Walmart there. Is there any conversation by Mr. Croft about actually attacking the governor's house that night?
Between the Walmart and this location in Elk Rapids, Mr. Croft says to the group in the car that I'm going to need to take a nap if we're going to be executing this tonight. I got to make sure I have energy for the night.
Okay.
So there was, yeah.
Okay. Did you have any response to that?
Absolutely. I told them we weren't going to be doing anything that night. This was simply to go take a look, that we weren't prepared. This was all in an effort just to kind of contain the situation.
Okay. Were you successful in de-escalating, Mr. Croft?
Yes, sir.
Okay. When you get up here, and how long are you in the AMVETS parking lot?
I would say approximately 10 to 15 minutes.
Okay. Where do you go from there?
From there, we drive up Bridge Street. So this street that runs on the south is Bridge Street.
I think it's 4, Adam.
We drive from Bridge Street north. I believe it's a left on River Street and then a right on Dexter. And once on Dexter, we come to the intersection of 31 and Dexter, which there's a bridge over the river there.
Can you zoom in on that just a little bit, please?
Bridge.
Yeah. There you go. Second page. Okay. So you what happens there when you get to the bridge?
Once at the bridge, Mr. Fox asked me to get out of the car. So he and I, first I should say our cell phones, we retrieve our cell phones from the glove box. For operational security, they had decided to put all cell phones in the glove box and turn them off. So he instructs me to grab my cell phone. We get out of the car, we walk down a footpath that goes underneath the bridge there on the north side. And at that point, this was to conduct a site survey of the bridge to see what it would take to blow the bridge up. And so we walk underneath the bridge, a couple photos were taken, and we walk back up.
What's the weather like that night?
It was raining.
Okay. It's mid-September in Michigan, right?
Yes.
Northern Michigan, okay. And while you're underneath the bridge, do you take any pictures?
Yes, sir.
What do you take a picture of?
I take a picture of Mr. Fox taking a picture of the underside of the bridge.
Okay. And are you familiar with proposed exhibit 197?
Yes, sir.
You can turn to your book there and take a look at it if you would, please.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I am.
Okay. Does that look familiar to you?
It does.
Okay. And just describe it generally for us.
This is the underside, the understructure of the bridge that runs north on 31 there outside of Elk Rapids.
Is that the general area Mr. Fox was taking a picture of?
Yes, it was.
Move for admission, please, of proposed exhibit 197.
Mr. Shadow? Mr. Warner?
No objection, Your Honor. Thank you.
197, sorry. 197.
Thank you. Okay. You said you took a picture of Mr. Fox taking a picture, right?
I did, yes,
Can you
sir.
turn to proposed exhibit 199, please?
Yes, sir.
And generally describe what you're looking at there.
That is a picture, that is the picture I took. This is the underside, the north side of the underside of that bridge. There you can see Mr. Fox to the left, his back is turned to me, and he is taking the picture that was just displayed.
197, okay.
Yes,
Accurate photograph of what you took that night?
Yes, it is.
I'm going to move for admission of 199, please, Judge.
Mr. Shadow?
Standing here. Oh, Your Honor.
199.
And what do we see here on the big screen?
Sir, so this is the walkway, the pedestrian walkway that runs underneath the bridge. This is the section that we just saw on 197, and this is Mr. Fox standing on the embankment there. I believe he had just taken a photo and he was reviewing it on his phone.
Okay. After you leave the bridge area, can I have the first page of Exhibit 4, please? Looking at the screen here, this is Exhibit number 4 for the record. Once you leave the bridge area, Tim, can you tell the ladies and gentlemen on the jury where you went to?
Once we had the assignments and everyone was clear on where we were going, this is 31 running north out of town, out of Elk Rapids. My car, the vehicle I'm in, we take a right here. This is Williamson Road. We circle around the south side of Birch Lake. We come down to this point, and this is Karen Highway, if I remember correctly, and then we go north on Birch Lake Road. And then we take a left here, Birch Point Road, I believe is what that's called, and then the boat launch where we stop is right there at that point.
Hey, backing up a little bit, when you're at the AMVETS and these assignments are being given out, the vehicle that the Knoll brothers are in, what's the assignment for that vehicle again?
That vehicle was to be the spotting vehicle, so the vehicle driving around conducting counter surveillance,
Okay. Looking for what exactly?
looking for law enforcement,
Okay.
individuals that may be out
Okay.
conducting surveillance on us.
Okay. Okay. When you get to the boat launch there, Mr. Fox is in the car still, correct?
Correct.
Mr. Croft?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And what happens?
Everybody exits the vehicle. We park. It's not depicted here, but we park sort of back towards the wood line. We walk to the shoreline. At this point, there's communication with the vehicle driven by Mr. Higgins. Mr. Higgins' vehicle, again, was the vehicle that was their instruction was to flash their brights as they passed the governor's residence on Timberline Drive, which is here.
Okay. What happens at the boat launch once you guys get out of the vehicle?
Mr. Croft was in possession of a night vision device, so a monocular night vision goggle. We are standing on the shoreline waiting to see the brights flash. And on the first pass, this is pretty heavily wooded here. So as the vehicle got down in here, we could see the lights. Didn't really see anything as they drove this portion. The vehicle was instructed by Mr. Croft, Mr. Fox to turn around and drive it again. The vehicle comes back around, goes to the south end, turns around and drives again. And this is where we see the flashing of the bright lights in this area here as identified by that night vision device. At that point, Mr. Fox, Mr. Croft, everybody's very excited that location's been spotted.
Okay. How long are you at the boat launch for?
15, 20 minutes.
Okay. Besides what you described so far, these two vehicle passes on Timberlake Drive, I mean, was there anything else that happened?
Yes, sir. There was a discussion as to how this operation was going to be conducted. So obviously there's a large body of water here that was going to need to be crossed. There was discussion about the fact that boats were going to need to be stolen, that other vehicles were going to need to be stolen to tow the boats, to get the boats into position, things along those lines.
Okay.
Yeah, I need to interrupt Mr. Olson, but the foundation regarding this, who are we talking to at this point in time, Your Honor?
Well, I think you ran over who was in the car, but, so that was pretty in.
Sure.
So with respect to this water plan or boat plan, Your Honor?
Well, I think Ryan, the first one,
Yes, Your Honor.
could you give us a list of names of those people?
Yes, Your Honor. It was myself, CHS Dan, Mr. Fox, Mr. Croft, and CHS Steve that were there at that time.
Okay. And in terms of the ideas for like stealing boats and stealing cars, who was coming up with that?
That was Mr. Fox.
Okay. And hey, on the way north from Elk Rapids up to Birch Lake, does Mr. Croft have any additional ideas for the plan?
Yes, sir. Between Elk Rapids and Birch Lake, Mr. Croft was taking note of the power lines and the large trees that were alongside of the road during this drive. His suggestion was that we cut those down either by use of chainsaw explosive to fell the trees or the telephone poles across the road to slow law enforcement response.
Okay. In terms of exhibit number 4, page 1, is there any other place that you visited after leaving the boat launch?
Yes, sir.
Tell us about that.
After the lights were spotted here at the boat launch, we retraced our route and came back out this direction. We go across 31, and the purpose for this was to identify once the governor had been kidnapped, where we could then take her to put her on a second boat and to take her out onto the main body of the lake there. So we came across here, identified a footpath that exists here for access to the beach. Once that was identified, we go up here and turn around in a driveway and return across the road. We come back over here to this Red Bull Tavern where all three cars once again link up.
The Lake Michigan access point, whose idea was it to go there?
Mr. Croft and Mr. Fox.
Okay. And when you get back to the Red Bull Tavern there in that area, what happens?
Mr. Fox, so it's raining again at this point. Mr. Fox gets out of the car. I believe Mr. Croft Mr. Croft and Mr. Fox both get out of the car, excuse me. And they have a conversation with Mr. Higgins. During that point, there were only two vehicles there. Shortly after the vehicle that the Knoll brothers were in arrives, it was decided at this point we should just head back to the Luther area.
Okay. And do you go back to Luther?
I do.
Okay. And are you there on Sunday?
Yes, sir.
Tell us a little bit about what happens then.
Sunday morning, mid-morning or so, once everybody's up and moving around, the live fire portion of the CQB training was executed at this point. So this was the day before, you could think of as sort of a rehearsal for that. So there was no live fire, it was just dry. So on Sunday morning, it was live fire exercise that was taking place inside the shoot house.
Okay. The shoot house that was there, at any point during the weekend, did you hear any discussion about what it was supposed to help with, what they were using it for?
Yes, sir. There's conversation taking place throughout the day on Saturday that was indicative of the shoot house meant to be a mock-up of the governor's residence here on Birch Lake.
Okay, and was there any specifics mentioned about, why it was, what was similar, or what the idea was, how it could be helpful?
They felt the approach to the house was an accurate depiction of, or a semi-accurate depiction of the mock-up of the residence.
Okay. In terms of the meeting on Saturday that you described for us earlier about when you showed the videos and the explosives, was there any discussion about purchasing?
Yes.
Okay, tell us about that.
Mr. Fox had inquired at several points from Saturday night through Sunday how much explosive would be needed, what the price point would be. It was determined that it would take about $4,000 worth of explosive. That was the price given to Mr. Fox by myself. Mr. Fox also asked for flashbangs.
What are those?
They're used by law enforcement as a distraction or a diversionary device. It is meant to turn people's attention away from something in the law enforcement world. It can be used really in any capacity. However, what it is, it's a very loud, audible bang met with a very bright flash of light. It will incapacitate someone for a short period of time if they're not prepared for it.
Okay. And whose idea was the flashbang? Yours or Mr. Fox's?
Mr. Fox.
Okay. And just to be clear, your entry into this case was after they were searching for explosives.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And in terms of the training that went on Saturday, I think you mentioned the Knolls went through the whatever you want to call it, CQB or close quarter or CQC, close quarter combat house or shoot house or kill house. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Are you familiar with proposed exhibit 175? And here's an index if you want to take a look at that. It's gonna be a video, so
Okay.
you want to just. Is that, have you, we're going to lay a foundation first before we play it for you.
Okay.
Is that something you viewed recently?
Yes.
Can you just generally describe what it is?
This is a video taken from inside the shoot house. You'll be looking towards what was meant to serve as the front door of the shoot house. You'll see individuals coming from both the left and right sides as you're looking at it, entering into the house in a tactical manner.
Okay. And when did this happen? What day? Saturday or Sunday?
This was Saturday.
Okay. And accurate depiction of what was observed there?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to move for admission of proposed exhibit 175, please.
Mr. Miller? Mr. Second?
No comment.
Mr. Burnett? No objection. Okay, 175 is the meeting.
Okay. And Adam, if you could play that, please. And just before we play it, actually, there's some pixelization in this video. Is that correct?
Yes.
And who's the individual that's been pixeled or pixelized?
CHS Dan, I believe UC Mark is also pixelized.
Okay. All right. Go ahead. Thank you. Yeah, get ready to pause it.
So on this here, obviously, I'm clear, the only person I'm being on target here, so third man is gonna hold the hallway, right, to the left. I'm really wondering.
Pause it just for a second. Who's the gentleman that's saying the third man in is going to hold the hallway?
That's Mr. Fox.
Okay, all right. Go ahead, please.
All right, first off, we can cover your dates there, and then cover your dates. We're going to cover dates, so right now we're covering. I got this angle, you got that. Okay. So right now, we're myself, you got our, you line up on there.
Just pause it for a second. Again, the person giving the instructions here, is that Dan?
No, sir.
Who is that?
That's Mr. Fox.
Okay, go ahead.
This is gonna go, if I go high board, that's your cue to go. Okay? If you go high board, that's my cue. So whoever is clear, I go high board, you roll in, I'm up right now.
Roll, can you turn the same, please, roll.
Thank
In here, thank you.
Go back one. Okay. Just try to check it all the way. Do that. Where's the end? Carson, you're you're gonna hold the door, make sure nobody's like, was it sorry? So, like, if this, we're just on one, yeah, there is, so, you're coming, you're gonna be salty, you're gonna hold the door, make sure. Yeah. No.
Okay. The proposed exhibit 176, you familiar with that, Tim?
Yes, sir.
And just generally describe what it is, please.
This will be same angle of the video, again, towards what is supposed to be the front door of the shoot house. And this is the Knoll brothers making entry into that
On what date?
on Saturday, the 12th.
Okay. Accurately represent what you just described?
Yes, sir.
Okay, move for admission of 176, please, Judge.
Just a quick one here, Your Honor. Sure. 175, which when, what's the date of that? The time,
That was also the 12th,
the time on the 12th, if you know.
mid-afternoon.
Okay, and then 176, is this on the 12th as well?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is this meeting, is it before or after 175? This is nice.
It was all taking part at the same time, sir.
Okay. So this follows 175.
I believe so.
Oh, no comment. No comment.
Mr. Martin? No objection. Okay, 176 will be admitted, and Mr. Jones, you know that you couldn't hear the audio, if anybody needs to move. That's good.
Thank you, Your Honor.
If you could play that, please, Adam. Thank you. Can you pause that, please? The gentleman there with the, that's just entered the threshold of the doorway, baseball cap on, who's that?
I believe that's Mr. Bill Knoll.
Okay, and can you back that up just a little bit? A little bit more, Adam, thank you. Stop. I think it was a little bit more. Thank you. Yeah. And stop. That gentleman right there, Tim, do you know who that is?
That's Mr. Mike Knoll.
Okay. Did you know them to be twins?
I knew them to look very similar. I did not know them to be twins.
Okay. Is there any doubt that the two gentlemen you've identified are at least the Knoll brothers?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. And go ahead, Adam. Thank you.
please. So, man, fine. What they did,
What's the purpose of what they're doing there, Tim?
It was my understanding that this day was,
That's just speculation. My understanding implies it's going to speculate about the answer.
Goes to weight versus admissibility, Judge.
Well, were you told what the purpose was, sir?
it was to,
Were you told what the purpose
no, sir, not specific.
was?
Thank you.
Okay, have you seen this kind of activity before in your SWAT experience?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and what's going on?
Objection. He's circling the wagon trying to get this, trying to get the answer out.
I've added more foundation is what I've done.
Okay, that's the accused appears. Mr. Rosen, they under discussion, you have a follow-up question?
I sure do, Judge. Thank you. Hey, Tim, what we just saw there, is that part of like a house clearing exercise?
Yes, sir.
Okay, fair enough. And
Your Honor, I think they're
Not at all.
We have introduced them to the jury as you see red, excuse me,
Yes, you said.
now he's being referred to as Tim. I just there's a similar record, obviously the same person, but you introduced to the jury as you see here before red, so.
Yep, and I generally in the court will continue to address them as you see red or red. If the Attorney General's office has chosen to use the name Tim, that's perfectly appropriate as well. But it is
I mean, he said his name Tim when he came in, so that's why I've adopted that. Thank you, Judge. Okay, Tim. Can you turn please to, are you familiar with proposed exhibit 177?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and describe generally what that is.
That is Mr. Mike Knoll entering into the shoot house.
Okay, how certain are you as to the first name?
Fairly certain.
Okay, and it's a still photograph, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And in terms of the photograph and who it depicts, is it, what's your certainty as to at least it being one of the Knoll brothers?
My certainty to at least one of them 100%. Can I speak to the first name? They look very similar, so
Gentlemen have a baseball cap on?
yes.
Okay. Fair enough. And does it accurately depict at least one of the Knoll brothers on the 12th of September entering the shoot house?
Yes, it does.
Move for admission of 177, please.
Mr. Youngfield.
Dan, why don't we just briefly, you don't know that fellow Mike in the picture, do you, sir?
Sir, if I held this up next to the two, I would be able to tell you who it is, but I don't have the ability to do that, so no, I can't speak to exactly who
The
it
question would be the same for proposed exhibit 178, sir.
is. My answer would be the same, yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Wilson, are these screenshots from the previous?
They are, Judge.
I think based on the testimony, the video has been admitted in this clear what it is. I think given a potential discrepancy relative to proposed 177 and 178, what will not.
I'll move on. Thank you, Judge.
No, thank you. No.
Okay, thank you.
The entry into the shoot house or the kill house by the Null brothers. Was this before or after the discussion about it being set up to mock the governor's cabin?
I can't speak to that, sir. That discussion took place on several points throughout the day.
Okay. Hey, Tim, one last question. The meeting you described with Mr. Fox led, what day was that in terms of when the discussion about needing to purchase explosives and things like that?
That was on Sunday, the 13th.
And were either of the Null brothers there?
Both of them were, yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'll yield the witness.
Good morning. I call you Brett. I'm not going to call you Tim.
Sure.
So the record stays clear, okay? I'm going to ask you just a few questions this morning. If you don't understand something I ask, would you kindly let me know, please?
Yes, sir.
Great, thank you. Do you have any problems understanding me right now?
No, sir.
Okay. When were you briefed by Dan about what was going on? What month was that? CHS Dan.
Oh, that would have been September. So you're talking about the specifics as it relates
Yeah,
to the FBI?
specifics, please.
It would have been September.
Okay. So did you learn anything from any of the other FBI agents or undercovers prior to September regarding what was going on?
In terms of the overall aspect of the case?
Right.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So aside from, going to your first exercise on the 12th of September, you had been briefed by other agents, correct?
Yes, sir.
Tell the jury who you were briefed by regarding what was going on. Not the context of what was going on, but who briefed you?
Mainly it was Hendrick that briefed along with his partner, Jason.
Okay, Agent Empola that we've been referring to for the last almost 3 weeks now. So
Yeah.
Anybody else?
No, it would have been those three that I gained information about the case from.
Okay, fair enough. And when did you get involved into this case?
Originally, the ask came in May and then more heavily involved in August.
Okay. So from May to August, September, you were still briefed on what was going on and what was happening regarding some of the movement that was being made by the Wolverine Watchman, Adam Fox, and Mr. Croft, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So on the way up, and I'm talking about the night of the 12th, Barry Croft had made it known to you and the people in your car that there was a plan of an attack that night, correct?
Mr. Fox
Fox.
Mr. Fox noted as to what the purpose of it was, yes.
Okay. And what was that again, please? Who was in the car and what was said?
Myself, CHS Dan, Mr. Fox, Mr. Croft, and CHS Steve were all in the vehicle I was in.
Okay.
We were the lead vehicle leaving the Walmart. This is the point where Mr. Fox says to me, we're going to go conduct surveillance on the residence of the governor for the purpose of kidnapping.
Okay. But I thought I heard you say on direct exam that Croft or Fox said, we're actually going to attack, and then you redirect it to the surveillance, if I understood you correctly, correct?
This was sometime later. Mr. Croft made mention that he needed to take a nap in order to have energy to conduct the attack that night. It was
Okay.
my understanding that Mr. Croft felt like it was going that night.
Okay. And it was you, if I understand your testimony, redirected it back to, we're only, and I'm quoting you, we're only going to do the surveillance tonight. Is that what you said on direct examination? Yes. Okay. So then you redirected it back to surveillance.
Correct.
Okay. And then you said, at some point from the Walmart to the AmVets parking lot, there was some tasking going on by Mr. Fox. Is that correct?
No, that didn't occur during the ride.
Okay, I'm sorry, at the AmVets parking lot.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so the assignments weren't done until the parking lot, correct?
That's
Of
the first time
AmVets.
I heard them.
The first time you heard them was at the AmVets parking lot?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Where were you positioned for purposes of that tasking by Mr. Fox?
I was either in the passenger seat of CHS Dan's vehicle or standing outside the passenger side.
Okay. So you heard the tasking going on, I take it,
I did.
and you had a recording device on you.
I did.
How many recording devices did you have on you?
I had two devices that were capable of recording. I can't speak to whether, I believe the one was in the glove box at that point.
Okay, okay. And it's not, it's a lot of the undercovers or the informants had at least one recording device on them, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And now, would it be fair for the jury to understand, and listen to my question carefully, that Mr. Fox is the only one who did the tasking that night with the vehicles, correct?
Mr. Croft was involved in that piece, but Mr. Fox was certainly the lead of that piece.
The lead, did Mr. Croft test individual cars that night?
I can't, he was bouncing back and forth. I can't speak to what he said.
Okay, so you don't know if he was tasking or not.
I know that it was being relayed from Mr. Fox to Mr. Croft. What happened after that
Okay.
when he walked to the
Well, the
other
tasking,
vehicles, I don't
okay.
know.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, forgive me. So the tasking of your vehicle, was that from Fox to Croft to you guys, or was that from Fox to you guys?
Fox does.
Okay, okay. And if I were to suggest, for instance, that Dan did some tasking that night, that would be incorrect, wouldn't it?
That would be incorrect.
Okay. Would you like me to ask my question again? Did you understand my question?
Right.
Did CHS Dan task any vehicles that night? Yes or no?
CHS Dan, if he tasked anybody.
I'm asking you.
He's cutting the witness off and
No,
doing this.
Gentlemen,
I'll rephrase.
hang on, let's do this. Let's start with, did he hear whether or not CHS?
I was going to ask that. Did you hear CHS Dan test that night? Yes or no?
If I recall correctly, CHS Dan got out of his vehicle and passed word from Mr. Fox to the vehicle that was next to us.
Okay. And who was that? Who was in that vehicle?
That would have been Mr. Higgins and the Knoll brothers, I believe.
Okay. Higgins was with the Knoll brothers?
Or excuse me, CHS Mark
Okay.
was in that.
Did you hear Fox test that vehicle, or did you just hear Dan test that vehicle that the Knolls were in?
I believe that was, again, from Mr. Fox telling CHS Dan to relay the message.
What's my
to-
question? Did you hear Mr. Fox test the vehicle that the Knoll brothers were in? Yes or no?
Indirectly, yes, sir.
Indirectly, what does that mean?
It means Mr. Fox told CHS Dan to tell the other cars.
How do you,
Gentlemen, sir, did you hear Adam Fox task the vehicle with the Knoll brothers?
Directly, Your Honor?
Yes.
Not directly.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Miller.
thank you, Your Honor. Now, the original plan was to have 3 cars up there that night, right? Yes or no? 3 cars on this mission, yes?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So if I were to suggest to you that the original mission only had 2 vehicles, would that be fair or unfair for the jury to understand?
Which portion are we discussing?
Well, did the original plan have 2 vehicles going up, or did the original vehicle have 3 vehicles participating in this mission around the governor's residence?
What I saw was 3 vehicles.
No, I'm asking you. Was the original plan 2 vehicles or 2 vehicles?
I can't speak to that, sir. I don't know if the original plan was 2 or 3. What I saw was 3 vehicles.
Okay. Wasn't there a request by Mr. Fox to put the Knoll brothers in with UC Mark because they couldn't fit in the other vehicles?
I don't know that, sir.
Were you not listening? Were you not paying attention?
So I was sitting in a vehicle. I'm not certain what was said outside that vehicle to
Okay.
the Knoll brothers.
You called the vehicle that the Knoll brothers were in, I think you made reference to it at least twice. You called it a spotter vehicle, correct? Did you not testify in direct examination making reference to it being a spotter vehicle, yes?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You don't know where that vehicle was that night, do you? Where UC Mark was? Can you,
At which portion?
any portion, what route did they take that night, do you know?
I know that where they were until we got to the AMVETS.
After AMVETS, and until you guys came back to AMVETS, where was UC Mark and the Knoll brothers? What path did they take?
We never went back to the AMVETS.
Okay.
That's the second time. sir.
Okay.
We went to the Red Bull Tavern.
Okay, I'm sorry, the Red Bull Tavern, forgive me. So what path did they take that night? The spotter car that you so described?
From the AMVETS to the Red Bull Tavern.
Yeah,
I
where?
can't speak to that.
You have no idea?
I can't speak to it.
Okay. Well, can't speak to it. Do you know where the car was, yes or no?
No, sir.
Okay. You know, when everybody met back at the Red Bull Tavern, you were there, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. There was no discussion with this spotter vehicle, the vehicle that the Knolls were in with UC Mark. There was absolutely zero discussion regarding what they saw or what they observed that night, correct? No discussion.
I can't speak to that.
Well, did you hear any discussion? Hey, guys, what did you see that night, or what did you observe?
I didn't hear it.
You didn't hear anything?
No, sir.
Okay. So the attack plan, which evolved on the trip up with Barry Croft and Adam Fox, because that was not part of the original plan, correct? The attack that was to occur on the night of the threat, correct?
I'm not certain what you're asking.
Well, who suggested first they were going to attack that night?
Mr. Croft suggested that he thought that it was going that night.
Okay, okay. And where were you going to, where was the talk about stealing the boats and getting the boats to conduct the amphibious attack from the boat launch to the backside of the governor's residence? Where was that discussion?
That also happened at the boat launch. Stealing the boats actually happens twice. It happens at the boat launch and then again the next day at the I guess we're calling it the Circle of Trust meeting.
Okay.
That happened on the.
But I'm asking you that if the attack plan that Barry Croft had suggested,
Barry Croft didn't suggest the plan. He suggested that they were doing it that night.
okay, okay. So, but you were familiar with this amphibious, that they were going to go from the boat launch, take a boat, and then gain access to the governor's residence from the water, correct?
Not at that point, no, sir.
Not at that point, but that was the plan, wasn't it?
I was not aware of that being.
You were not aware of that, okay.
Until the boat launch.
Okay, so what can you tell the jury with respect to the extraction? Was it supposed to take place from the back of the governor's residence that was looking on the water? Or was it supposed to take place from the front of the residence facing, I think, Timberlake Strait? Which one was to occur?
Based on the plan that was stated that night at the boat launch, it was to take place from the water.
From the water? Okay. But no boats had been stolen yet or gotten, correct?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. And so I assume that they must have talked about the extraction, right? How many people would be at the house, the governor, the husband, the family, and the detail, right? That must have been discussed, right?
In part.
How many people were going to be in the house during this extraction?
I don't think anybody really knew.
Okay. So you're planning an attack, planning a recon, but nobody knew how many people were at the house is what you're telling us?
The purpose of what took place at the boat launch, sir, was to identify where the house was,
Okay.
not necessarily the finer points of the attack.
Then what was the purpose of the boat launch?
What I just said, to identify where the house was from the boat launch.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this. Does the front of the residence, the governor's residence in Birch Lake, does that match, does that look similar to the backside of the residence?
I've not seen the.
You have no idea? Okay.
I didn't drive past it.
Okay. So if the extraction or the mission was to take place from the back of the residence, how is this mock-up at Luther supposed to be similar to what the governor's house looks like if you didn't even know what it looks like, the back of the house?
I can't say that it was or wasn't.
Okay. Because we're now hearing for the first time, I think after 3 weeks, that now the Luther FTX, the tarps, are now looking similar to the governor's residence up on Birch Lake. Okay, how is that? That after now close to 3 weeks, we're hearing for
Objection for the question.
I'll withdraw. So what room was the extraction mock-up supposed to be similar to at Luther on the 12th and the 13th?
The conversation that I heard,
Who'd you hear it from?
Mr. Garvin, I believe, was driving the conversation, that the front of the mock-up was similar to the approach of the governor's residence.
But if the extraction were to take place from the back, why are you now telling us that the mock-up is taking place in front of the residence?
So I said the approach. It could be the front, it could be the back. I can't speak to what he was referring to.
But there were no plans given out, schematics of the residence, correct?
No, again,
I'm just asking a simple question. Were any plans or
No.
schematics
No.
given out on the 12th or 13th?
No, sir.
You're telling us today you don't even know what the back of the residence looks like.
Ask and answer, Judge, 3 times.
I'm
I understand what day it is in the process. Right, bring it back down. What is the front and what is the back?
okay. I'm sorry, Your Honor?
What is the front and what is the back? Start with that.
Okay. Let me, if I may ask this.
That's perfectly fine. What I want to ensure is that everybody is talking about the same thing.
Right.
And that confusion doesn't result from that, which may be misinterpreted by others.
I understand.
Thank you.
So sitting here today, you don't know what the front of the house, you know what the front of the house looks like, correct?
I've never seen the house, sir.
Okay, so you don't know if the front of the house looks similar to the back of the house.
No, sir.
And if I were to say it had big windows in the back with a big porch and sliding doors, you couldn't tell us today if that were correct or incorrect, correct?
No, sir.
Okay. None of the FTX training, the exercises on the 12th and 13th involved actual extraction exercises, correct?
Meaning
You know-
what, sir?
Well, grabbing the person and how they were going to protect that person leaving the residence. None of that ever existed at the FTX training on the 12th and 13th, correct?
That is correct.
And there was no discussion regarding the number of extractions. So if the governor had her husband there or her family there or friends or relatives there was no talk or practice regarding extraction of more than one person on the 12th or the 13th, correct?
More than one person? No, there was not.
Okay. Because it was never discussed how many people would be involved in this extraction, correct?
It was discussed that she would have security there, and it was discussed that there would be a potential gunfight to get her.
I'm talking about extraction. I'm talking about the actual grabbing people, removing them from the residence without them being harmed, okay? And successfully taking them out to the Lake Michigan area. There was no practice or FTX training regarding extraction exercises, was there?
No, there was not.
When you talk about room clearings, those are synonymous with FTXs, correct?
No, I wouldn't say so.
So room clearing is something new that just happened to come about on the 12th and 13th at Luther, to your knowledge, as ex-military and FBI.
Whether, I don't
So
get-
clearing a room, is this a new exercise that just came about on the 12th and the 13th?
No, absolutely not. A field training exercise could be many things, which it did. It encompassed multiple things that day, the room clearing portion of the FTX.
But room clearings are part of FTXs. Would you agree with that?
Certainly, yes, sir.
Is that, what was the answer? Yes?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And room clearings would also involve mock-ups of rooms that the people participating in the FTX would go and clear, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And it's your testimony today that you can't verify whether or not this mock-up that you've said that was discussed mimicked the governor's house because you have no idea what the house looks like inside or out, correct?
Correct.
Did you provide radios to UC Mark for the null vehicle that was on this, on that, up in the area?
It did. Yes, sir.
Okay. So who did you give those radios to?
I had two radios. One was in my vehicle and one to UC Mark.
UC Mark. Okay. And where were those radios today? I mean, well, let me ask you this. Those radios, were they used or were they not used that night?
There was attempted use. To say they were used, I don't think is accurate.
Okay, they didn't work, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And that would be considered evidence, correct?
Yes, sir.
Where's that evidence today? Tell the jury.
I don't know where the radios
You
are.
have no idea.
No, sir.
Were they given back to you?
I don't recall ever receiving the one back from UC Mark, but 3 years ago, I can't say if
Okay.
I did or not.
But that was considered evidence because these are comms, right? Communication devices,
And
right?
I'm going to rise to object to Mr. Nunzio referring to something that's not in evidence as evidence.
I'm asking why it's not in there.
The question was, is it in evidence? It is not. It's been well established.
Okay.
I don't think we need to ask it again. So we'll use the same for that purpose.
Thank you for your testimony. No more questions, John.
Mr. Barnett?
Good morning again.
Fine, sir.
I'm going to refer to you as Red, if that's okay.
Yes, sir.
I represent Mr. Molitor. And you indicated that you saw him 3 hours after some point on Saturday. I don't want to mischaracterize your testimony. Could you repeat when you first saw Mr. Molitor on Saturday at the Luther training?
Saw or met? I believe the original question is when I met him.
Okay.
Saw him probably an hour or two after I got there. I don't believe I actually was in the same circle as he was until about 3 hours after I got there.
So you got there, you said around 1?
Yes, sir.
And so it'd be 2 hours, 1 to 2 hours after that. So 2 or 3 o'clock, you saw him for the first time.
Yes, sir.
In fact, you had talked, I'll call it an all hands meeting. In other words, I assume that
Could you say that again?
I'm going to call it an all hands meeting. Is that a fair characterization of what was going on? Everybody came into a circle at the beginning,
Yes, sir.
30 to 40 people.
Yes, sir.
What time was that?
I would say that occurred somewhere probably around 1:30.
Okay. Way before you saw Mr. Molitor there?
Probably an hour before. It's somewhere in that time frame.
Is it safe to say he wasn't at that all hands meeting?
Sir, I can't say specifically. I just know I didn't take note of him at that meeting.
Thank you. And Red, you were brought in to control the timeline here, I take it, relative to explosives.
Yes, sir.
And explain what controlling the timeline means.
Yes, sir. It was made aware to me that the group was seeking explosives and that they may have had conversation with somebody outside of the group already that had stated that they might be able to supply explosives. And so it became important for safety reasons, really, that we take control of the timeline in order to ensure that explosives were not actually procured by the group.
Okay, were you controlling the timeline or that approach back in May when you were first contacted?
No, sir.
Was it closer to September then and or in September?
It was September 12th.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
so you attended both the 12th and the 13th,
Yes, sir.
and your role at the training was what?
To be there to provide the explosives, or at least have the conversation with those that were the decision makers to be able to provide them with an opportunity to purchase explosives.
Okay. But as it worked out, both Dan and you were trainers there, right?
No, I wouldn't say that, sir.
Have you given prior testimony in this case before?
Yes, sir.
Did you testify on or about March 28th?
I'm going to ask that Mr. Barnett seeks to impeach that he present the document or whatever he's talking about to the witness.
Go ahead, Mr. Moran.
I didn't catch everything Mr. Ralston said.
Gentlemen, what we're going to do is if you could show the point that you're trying to impeach Mr. Ralston so he can review it, and then you can review the transcript with the witness so that he can review the question and answer.
Thank you.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Barnett, I'm going to go back to you.
Thank you very much, Your Honor. Right when we left, we were talking about September 12th. That would be the Saturday. Is that correct?
Yes,
And you were present that day,
I was.
and you saw what was going on,
Yes, sir.
and you observed Dan leading the training that day, didn't you?
I did.
Didn't you testify just a second ago that he was not leading the training?
I don't think you asked me about Dan at all.
What was Dan's role?
Dan was, so there were three sites, the three training sites, and Dan was leading the CQB site,
And what is what are those initials for?
close quarters combat,
Okay, is that
close quarters battle.
the shoot house?
Yes, sir.
So Dan was leading the training for the shoot house.
He was, sir, what I would like to point out is that there were a bunch of folks running through there all afternoon with rifles. It was in preparation for a live fire exercise the next day. And it was the goal of Dan and I to ensure that nobody was killed by an accident. And so Dan was leading from the perspective ensuring that everybody would be safe going through there.
What did you see him train? What were his training steps that he took that day?
Ensuring rifles were pointed in a safe direction.
And you trained with him? You did the same training?
In what sense?
I think you said you ensured as well that people were safe.
Making sure that people were positioned in a manner that they weren't going to shoot each other the following day.
And what was your role working with Dan?
I was simply assisting him.
Okay. You weren't leading the training, the whole thing?
No, sir.
And Dan wasn't either?
No, sir.
Okay. So he was training the Wolverine Watchman there?
At the shoot house?
Yeah.
In part.
Barry Croft,
Yes, sir.
Adam Fox.
Yes, sir.
And you didn't see on Saturday Eric Molitor going through that shoot house, did you?
No, I did not witness him back to the shoot house.
When there was discussion about the mock-up, that was in private meetings, wasn't it, off to the side? The mock-up of the shoot house?
In what regard?
Well, you said there was a discussion that the shoot house or kill house was a mock-up of the governor's residence.
I wouldn't say that was in private. That was a very, lack of a better term, open air conversation that took place over the course of a great while, actually, not just a short private conversation.
Okay. And if Dan said the plan was solidified on the 12th and 13th, would you agree with that, the overall plan that's going on here?
From a big picture, yes, sir.
Okay. So there was that all hands on meeting that I call it, where everybody's called in at 1:30-ish.
Yes, sir.
And those are the 29 to 40 people that are there training.
Yes.
Okay. And that was obviously an open air meeting. Right?
Yes.
There were, at approximately 5 o'clock that day, was there a private meeting?
Yes, there was.
And was that regarding videos of explosive blowing up things, that sort of thing?
It was.
And there were informants there.
Yes.
And who were the informants present at that meeting?
CHS Dan, Steve, and Jenny for a portion of the meeting.
Okay. And the agents that were present?
Myself and UC Mark.
Mr. Molitor not present for that meeting?
He was not.
And that was a private meeting.
He was.
Just a couple of things about the night ride. There was an issue with regard to the address of the governor's cottage, wasn't there?
I can't speak to that. I don't know.
Okay. And radios came up earlier with Mr. Nunzio. I'd just like to ask you a couple questions about that. Those were FBI radios, were they not?
They were DeWalt radios purchased at a local hardware store the morning before, the day before.
Okay. And those were government radios.
Purchased by the government, sure.
And you directed the group to go to channel 1, is that right?
I did.
And that if something went wrong, to go to channel 5,
Yes,
and that you provided them a code word of some sort to flip to 5.
I did.
What other direction or tasks did you give these folks?
None. I think it should be noted that the radios were for a safety purpose, that the FTX was
Sir?
taking place.
Okay, I asked you a question. If he,
You see, but I understand that the desire to perhaps want to explain or expand on a question. Please just answer the question that asked. Mr. Wilson will have a chance to redirect it.
Yes, Judge.
We're not.
thank you very much, Ernie. So What time was the first private meeting on Saturday approximately?
Regarding the explosives,
Yeah,
in the evening, it was probably between 5 and 6.
all right. And you indicated there was a second meeting on the Sunday?
Yes, sir.
And what informants were present at that one?
CHS Dan was there, CHS Steve was there. And then myself and UC Mark.
Okay, so 2 agents, 2 informants.
Yes, sir.
Jenny P. wasn't there that day.
I don't recall if she was in that meeting or not.
So Eric Molitor was not invited, or at least he was not present.
He was not present.
So he wasn't present at either meeting throughout the weekend.
Correct.
You called this meeting some sort of circle? What was that?
And it's been referred to as the sort of a circle of trust meeting, yeah.
Okay, so that would make sense that Mr. Molitor's not trusted at this point.
Okay,
I can't speak to that.
question.
It's the same.
So Mr. Molitor did not attend the circle of trust meeting.
He did not.
And was it at that time that the plan solidified, or was it the evening before?
We're part of the plan that we're talking about, sir.
The overall plan of the governor?
I can't speak to when it's solidified, I guess. In my mind, that was the point where they agreed to purchase explosives. Is what occurred in that meeting for the purpose of kidnapping the governor.
Saturday or?
Saturday.
Okay. And who else was at that Saturday meeting where it was?
Judge, he's asked this question.
No, I have not.
3 times. You didn't ask who else was there. I think it's been covered perhaps in other testimony, but it's perfectly appropriate. You see right who all was at the meeting on Saturday.
Yes, sir. That would have been Mr. Fox, Mr. Croft, the Knoll brothers were there. Brandon Caserta was there. Obviously myself, CHS Dan and CHS Steve.
This is the Saturday, the explosive meeting, watching the videos.
The explosives meeting, watching the videos took place on Saturday. The meeting that I just referred to was taking place on Sunday.
And that's where the plan,
Who was at the meeting on Saturday? So,
In which we're watching the videos, Judge?
yes.
That was myself, Fox, Croft, Dan, Steve, and Jenny in part. She left.
okay, that's the one you said was solidified, the plan was.
The one on Saturday is the one where things became more clear as to what they were purchasing them for.
You said something about motor vehicles being involved, or
Say that again?
did you testify that motor vehicles were involved, stolen motor vehicles, stolen boats?
That
That was part of
was
the plan?
discussed as part of the plan, that they would have to steal vehicles and boats to execute the plan.
Wasn't there something about an ATV talked about?
I don't know anything.
Thank you for your time.
Mr. Simon?
Judge, we can pass them.
Mr. Ralston, let me go back to you on your redirect.
No, thank you, Judge.
And ladies and gentlemen, let's take a quick break so you all can see if you have any questions. I guess let's do this. Take some time in the back to discuss that. If there's nothing, just knock at the door and then we'll know you're ready. Okay, all right. Did you become aware, I assume to use or UC Red, at what point did you become aware the shoot house was a mock-up of Governor Whitmer's cottage? Who all knew and how do you know, or would you know who all knew? I understand the question is asking topically. I think the series of questions maybe at what point or points during the weekend did he hear that and who was present that he was able to observe when it was said?
The point that is, I'm putting on those who may be in the vicinity accepting that it was mock-up. The question was, who knew? And I think that blindly states who actually knew it was the mock-up and saw it. I don't want the witness who testified to, quite frankly.
I mean, I can ask the part of who knew and how you know that they knew.
But I think that would be fair.
This entity is quite a vague word.
Okay. That's it.
Just
Any objection to that? Who knew and how did they know?
No, sir.
Any objection to the beginning part of what point did you become aware that she was a mock-up?
It's been asked and answered, but we have no objection to that being asked again.
Yeah, I would agree. I think just in order to answer the follow-up questions, I think.
No objection.
Any objection?
No, sir.
Okay. And just for the record, because I'm going to give these questions obviously to the clerk, there will be much worse in writing in blue pen that is included on there. Those are just my notes based on our discussion.
Very nice.
So then there are three questions that relate to the same thing. One reads in particular about explosives. At what meeting were the Null brothers? Question mark. When? Question mark. What was discussed? Question mark. Did they know there would be explosive use during the kidnapping? Question mark. The next question about that topic, was there any discussion? Well, the meeting at FTX about explosives, you said the Nulls were present. How long was this meeting and at what length did you discuss the explosives with the Nulls? Question mark. And then the third one relates more to the, I'm going to say quote unquote plan because the word plan is in quotes. No. Was there any meeting or discussion about the quote unquote plan to kidnap Governor Whitmer from Fox or Croft that the Null brothers or Molitor were present and physically heard? We don't know how to answer the physically heard part, but were they present at those conversations, meeting right there? But, so I think that that's a proper question. I would just, if I say we're present for, does that create the same space concerns for you all, or is there other wording that you could offer? If I say physically heard, I don't want, I can't ask the witness if they know what somebody else heard.
We would agree with that.
Okay. Let's brainstorm.
I do have my follow-up questions, Your Honor, after these, but, I don't know how the court asked, quite frankly. Because the presumption is that they were at the meeting, they heard it, accepted it. I think that's the tenor of the question. So how would this witness know?
The question is, was there any meeting or discussion about the quote unquote plan to kidnap Governor Whitmer from Fox or Croft that the Null brothers or Molitor were present and physically heard? Well, I mean, I can amend it as present, but.
Sure. But I guess the message, Your Honor.
So, were Croft that the Null brothers or Molitor were present for?
I would ask to take the Molitor name off. He was not present for any meeting ever throughout this entire situation.
Well, that may be the answer, but that doesn't mean the question's proper, so. Okay. So was there any meeting or discussion about the quote unquote plan to kidnap Governor Whitmer from Fox or Croft that the Null brothers or Molitor were present? Would be the first question for the jurors. Mr. Munson.
We're okay with that, Your Honor.
Okay, Mr. Shadowell. All right, next question, Mr. Barnes.
Thank you, Your Honor. And the same objection for reasons stated.
Yeah, could you repeat the question again, Your Honor?
I'm not going to say the quote unquote plan, okay?
Okay.
Was there any meeting or discussion about the plan to kidnap Governor Whitmer from Fox or Croft that the Null brothers or knowledge were present?
Very much. It's not really all three defendants separate.
I mean, that's the phrasing that they use in the question. It's
Okay.
so that one. And then let's talk about the two that deal with explosives. And there was some confusing discussion when we kept jumping between Saturday and Sunday. I think that's probably the issue for them. But the first one reads in particular about explosives. At what meeting were the Null brothers? When? What was discussed? Did they know that there would be, did they know there would be explosives used during the kidnapping? And then the second one is, it says Sunday at half, the meeting at FTX about explosives, you said the Nulls were present. How long was this meeting? And at what length did you discuss the explosives with the Nulls? So let's take the second one first. The first part of that, the Sunday meeting at, the carrot. So Sunday, it should read, the Sunday meeting at FTX about explosives. You said the Nulls were present. How long was this meeting? I think that's an appropriate question. And at what length did you discuss the explosives with the Nulls? I guess my thought would be, were explosives discussed? And at what length, I promise at what length, I don't think they mean time, I think they mean breadth of discussion. What was said, I mean, the answer said, you have any issue with that?
No, I don't remember. I think we're trying to.
How long was this meeting? Mr. Simon? Mr. Brown?
No objection.
Mr. West? And then, so at what meeting were the Null brothers, if they mean between the days, Saturday?
I would be correct.
Right. What was discussed will be answered by the previous question. Is the next part. The next part of the question is what was discussed. That will be covered. And then, did they know that there would be explosives used during the kidnapping? I don't think that's a proper question. He wouldn't be able to answer that.
I will agree with that, Your Honor.
Mr. Wilson? Agreed. Okay, Mr. Savage? Agreed. Okay, Mr. Garner?
Agreed.
And obviously, after the questions, I'll allow the parties to ask any additional questions. I would plan to cover all of them with the first, and then we'll go to Mr. Ralston, Mr. Nunzio, Mr. Barnett, Mr. Cyber, and then back in that circle if necessary. Okay. Anything else from anybody before we bring them back?
No, sir.
Okay. All right. Okay, everyone can be seated. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. So, just so you all understand, and I think we did this once before a little bit, but just so you understand the process, what I'll do, confer with the attorneys and, as part of the process, we have to go through the questions that are usually proper, to be asked. And so, what we've done is, reformat, upload them, give the topic that we think was part of the question. And then, as you saw before when we did this, the attorneys then get to ask any follow-up questions. Okay, so I'll ask the questions that we determined are appropriate. One of the questions would be, and these are for you, obviously. Did you observe Mr. Molitor with a weapon at the FTX?
Yes, I did.
Okay, what kind of weapon?
The weapon that Mr. Molitor carried, he had a pistol holstered on his right hip.
And what days or times did you observe?
That would, I can recall it being Saturday specifically, Your Honor. I don't recall if he maintained that on Sunday as well.
At what point did you become aware the shoot house was a mock-up of Governor Whitmer's cottage?
I became aware of that on Saturday. So at some point after the training had commenced, there was a conversation led by Mr. Ty Garvin as to how it was constructed and the hopes that it was mocked up, or the intent that it was mocked up to represent at least the approach to the governor's house.
Okay, who stated that?
Mr. Garvin.
Who did he state that to?
That one's much more difficult. There was a group of people training at the shoot house, and it was said just sort of in an open air conversation. The Null brothers were at the shoot house at that time, along with Mr. Higgins was standing there, Mr. Fox was standing there. But it was very much a conversation that was had over the course of time and said as people were coming and going.
Do you know who knew that was the mock-up was supposed to resemble the governor's cottage?
No, Judge, I do not know who knew that.
I'm sorry, what was that question, Your Honor?
If he knew, who knew that was supposed to be a mock-up of the governor's?
Thank you, Your Honor.
And then, was there any meeting or discussion about the plan to kidnap Governor Whitmer from Fox or Croft that the Null brothers or Mr. Molitor were present for?
Yes, so the meeting that took place on Saturday, around noon on Saturday, was a meeting attended by the Null brothers, Fox, Croft, Brandon Caserta, myself. CHS Dan was there, CHS Steve was there. That meeting was to discuss with me.
Objection, speculation, that meeting was to discuss?
And what was discussed at the meeting?
The purchase of explosives from me.
Who discussed that?
That was Mr. Fox. If I may elaborate on this conversation.
No, that's the difficult part is we don't know the answer to that part. So that was a discussion that Mr. Fox had?
Everyone that was present was a part of a conversation regarding purchasing explosives from me.
And who was there for that?
Myself, Mr. Fox, Mr. Croft, the Knoll brothers, Brandon Caserta was there, CHS Dan was there, and CHS Steve was also present.
Okay. The Sunday meeting at the FTX about explosives, were the Nulls, who was present to that?
That was the meeting that I just referenced.
Okay. How long was that meeting?
John, I don't mean to correct the court. The 12th was Saturday, the 13th was Sunday. And I don't want the jury confused on dates. The 12th was Saturday, the 13th was Sunday.
That's it.
You said
Sunday as well.
said Sunday, but the witness said that was the first one, or the second. So I'm not sure if the witness is confused, I'm not suggesting anything.
No, that's fine. Let's do this. Okay, there was a meeting on Saturday where explosives were discussed, is that correct?
Yes, Judge.
Who was present for the meeting on Saturday the 12th?
Saturday the 12th was the meeting where I showed a video of the explosives. At that meeting was myself, CHS Dan, Adam Fox, Barry Croft, CHS Jenny in part for that meeting. She left pretty abruptly after seeing the video.
Okay, and was the office anybody else?
I believe CHS Steve was there for that meeting as well.
Okay. And the testimony about the planned meeting finalized relative to explosives. Do you recall that testimony?
Yes.
Was that at that meeting?
No, it was not.
Okay. Then there was a meeting on Sunday the 13th, is that correct?
Yes, Judge.
And I think we've gone over who was there a couple of times. So I'll object to myself being asked and answered, but I did get us. Who was at the meeting on the Sunday the 13th?
Sunday, the 13th, that was myself, Barry Croft, Adam Fox, the Knoll brothers were there, Brandon Caserta was there, CHS Dan, CHS Steve.
Okay. How long was that meeting, this Sunday meeting?
I would say that meeting was somewhere in the neighborhood of 25 minutes.
What was said at the Sunday meeting?
That meeting, it was noted by Mr. Fox that that moving forward, that the group of individuals that were standing there at the time, it was sort of an in or out moment for those people that were standing there. They were told that this was a discussion concerning the governor, and if they wanted out, they should leave now. No one left. After that, it was stated that the group would be pooling resources, doing things to gather money to be able to purchase $4,000 worth of explosives from me. It was also stated, it was also asked by Mr. Fox of me if I could supply them with flashbangs, as previously discussed. And again, noted that additional surveillance would need to be done, and that the theft of boats and vehicles would be needed to conduct the operation, so that they were going to have to be looking for opportunities to do that as well.
And there was an additional question from the jury about that same sort of topic, and what I would note is, in the court's opinion, the questions in that note have been answered with the previous one. So as I indicated, ladies and gentlemen, what happens next is the parties have an opportunity to ask questions following yours. Ms. Ralston?
No, thank you, Judge.
Mr. Nunzi?
Yes, thank you.
You had indicated that this mock-up of the governor's residence was kind of an open air kind of thing, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you testified that you heard this, correct?
Mhm.
Okay,
Yes.
Yes.
okay. And at that time, you had a recording device on you, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Are there any recordings, to your knowledge, that capture this open air conversation regarding the mock-up of the governor's residence? Yes or no? Are there any recordings that exist that reflect what you're telling the jury today?
I can't speak to it. I don't know if there are or not.
You have no idea, do you?
I don't know if it exists on recording.
Well, if I were to suggest that there are no recordings, would that surprise you?
Gonna object to the former's question.
What? Would it surprise you? Yeah, would it surprise you that there are no recordings of what you're testifying to today? Yes.
I think it assumes the fact that it happens.
Well, if I answered the question was, if I were to tell you that there are no recordings, would that surprise you? That's perfectly appropriate. Is that your question?
Yeah, precisely.
Based on what I know of how the recordings worked that weekend, no, it wouldn't surprise me.
Okay. Well, you heard it. You had a recording device on you, correct?
Yes,
Okay. And you obviously went over your recordings, didn't you?
I did.
You went over, how many other agents, FBI agents, did you go over the recordings with? You don't have to tell us the names, just tell us the numbers.
In what capacity?
Well, what did you do with your recordings? Did you keep them? Did you turn them over? Who'd you give them to? You gave them to Agent Impla, did you?
I believe my recording devices.
I'm sorry.
That's okay, there's about 4 questions there.
I realized that. Who did you give your recordings to?
At the end of the day,
Yes.
it was Mr. Chambers. I believe.
Okay, Jason Chambers.
Yes.
Okay, I think I got that name right. Okay. Well, before coming in here today, you obviously met with maybe some of the other agents and some of the attorney generals sitting here to kind of review your testimony. There's nothing wrong with that, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Well, did anybody ask you or review with you any of the recordings that include this mock-up conversation of the governor's residence?
No.
That topic never came up in your review before your testimony today, correct?
No, the topic came up in review of the testimony. It did not
Sure.
come up in
Okay. Well, let me ask you
the
this.
recordings.
Case has been pending for quite some time, right? In the past 3 years, have you listened to any recordings that included this mock-up governor residence conversation?
I've reviewed all of my tapes. I don't know if it exists elsewhere. I can't speak to that.
Okay, but I'm asking you, and now you've added an element to that. Have you listened to any recordings that include what you testified in front of the jury today regarding this open-air mock-up conversation?
No.
Okay. Well, how many informants and FBI agents were present during this, I think you called it this continual conversation about the mock-up? How many would have been present and how many would have had recording devices on them? Please tell the jury.
At any one time, probably 2.
2? And that would be the minimum amount of informants or agents who would have been present during this mock-up
The
conversation?
minimum would have been 1.
1. Okay. What about the maximum number of
Probably
people?
2.
2? Okay.
I would guess it's speculation, but I would guess
Okay.
it was 2.
Well, is CHS Dan one of those people?
Yes.
Is Undercover Mark one of those people?
I don't recall him in the vicinity during that conversation.
Okay, but you don't know.
I don't know.
Okay. What about CHS Jenny P at the time?
No.
Okay. Can you think of any other any other CHSs who would have been present during that period of time?
No.
Okay. And you didn't have the opportunity to review any of their recordings to see if this mock-up conversation existed, correct?
Correct.
Okay. You have reviewed recordings before coming in here today, correct?
Yes.
But the ones you didn't review were this mock-up conversation, correct? In other words, you were presented with other recordings before coming in here today, correct? So
I've
listen
been
to
presented with all of my recordings.
Okay. I'm sorry, you've been presented with all of your recordings? Before, you just testified you were presented with all of your recordings before you came in here today, correct?
At some point in the last 3 years, I've reviewed all of my recordings.
Okay. Wasn't Ty Garbin in the breakout group during the FTXs? Wasn't he in one designated group aside from Mike and Bill Knoll, to your knowledge?
In terms of, I'm not.
Were the groups separated? Weren't there certain breakout groups? In other words, let's say group 1 would be in one station and another group would be in another station?
Yes.
Okay. Ty Garbin was never in the Knoll group, was he?
I believe the video that was reviewed earlier today shows the Knolls entering with Ty Garbin present.
Okay. Do we hear anything there about the mock-up of the residence?
I can't speak to it. I didn't hear audio of.
Okay.
particular clip.
How many people would you say were present during this mock-up governor residence during the FTX? How many people were present during that?
During,
The conversation, the open air, hey, we're doing the FTX and this is a mock-up of the governor's residence. How many people were there participating in the FTX?
in the FTX on total, probably 30 to 40.
But who were listening, who heard, well,
I
not who
can't speak
heard.
to who heard.
Okay. But more than 10 people, right?
I can't speak to that.
Well, there were individuals who were not arrested, correct, who heard this plan and participated in the FTX, right?
Judge, I have one other question, Judge. She can't testify as to who heard what.
I'm asking about the number of people.
So, yeah, if I heard the question correctly, it was there were people that heard that conversation that participated in the FTX that were not arrested.
That's correct, Your Honor.
Do you have an objection to that question?
I do.
What's your objection?
The witness can't testify as to who heard what, and then it also leads to confusion as to why other people weren't
I'll
arrested.
withdraw the question and replace the word heard for who or how many people were present in the FTX.
Let's do this. The question is unwithdrawn, so the court doesn't need to take any action.
Sure.
to the objection. Let's ask the next question and we'll go from there.
You had indicated that this open air conversation, this mock-up of the governor's residence during the FTX was talked about throughout the FTX, correct?
It was a conversation that, where things were mentioned regarding that at several points.
Okay. How many people, total people were present during these conversations?
So the total number of people at the FTX was somewhere between 30 and 40. It was split into thirds. So
Okay.
in terms of being at that particular station, you're talking about 12 to 15 people, depending on how the group was actually split. Now, in terms of proximity to Ty when he said it and who actually heard it from the group, I can't speak to that.
You can't speak to that. Okay. The Knowles were not present during your video demonstration on the 12th, correct? Okay. The meeting on the 13th, that was on a Sunday, correct?
Yes.
You did hear Steve Roberson call for the Knowles to come down to the meeting, correct?
I don't recall that.
Do you recall Jenny P. specifically getting the Knowles to join the meeting, correct?
I don't recall that either.
When you say you don't recall, is it possible that they did or you just don't recall?
I don't know if they did or did not.
Okay, fair enough. So you don't know how the Knowles were invited and who got them for purposes of the meeting on the 13th, correct?
I do not.
Okay. Now, Steve Roberson said they didn't want any fence sitters. And I think you had described on direct examination people who wanted to be in and people who wanted to be out, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. The Knowles did, and you were recording at this point in time, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you have reviewed that recording before coming in here today, correct?
Yes.
Recently or within the last 3 years?
Recently.
Okay. Neither Knoll, Mike or Bill Knoll say, I'm in. They don't do that, do they? Yes or no?
No.
No. Okay. Neither Mike or Bill Knoll say, I'm down with the plan. I'm in. They don't say that either, do they?
No.
Was there a request for funding for these explosives at this meeting on the 13th?
Yes.
The Knowles, neither Mike or Bill Knowles said, hey, listen, we can pitch in 100 or 1,000 or 5,000. They never say anything regarding the purchasing or the contribution of funds for these explosives, do they?
Nobody did.
Nobody did. I was asking specifically about the Knowles.
That includes them.
Okay. The portion of the explosives talk at this meeting, was there an itinerary sent out before this meeting took place on the 13th, or was this what we call an ad hoc meeting? In other words, it was just, everybody come down, we need to talk because Barry or Adam need to talk. Was there an itinerary? Did people know why they were going down to this meeting ahead of time?
I can't speak to that.
Well, did you let people know why they were going to the meeting?
No,
Okay. Did you know what the meeting was about before people came to join the meeting?
I did.
But you can't say whether or not the Knowles knew why the meeting was to take place and what was to be discussed, correct?
I can't say that.
You can't say that. The explosives part of the meeting on the 13th was a minor part. Would that be a fair statement? In other words, it wasn't discussed throughout this 25-minute meeting, correct?
I would say it was actually a major part of the conversation.
In terms of time frame, not major part, but time frame.
Hang on, Mr. Winter. You asked him if it was a major or minor part. He described it as a major part. And he would follow up as to the length of time.
How many minutes was the explosive talk about at the meeting?
I don't know.
1 minute? I could give you a number of minutes and you wouldn't be able to answer the question. Would that be fair?
Several minutes if we're talking about purchase price and all of those things.
Okay. Purchase price and who could fund, right? Who could contribute? Yes?
That wasn't discussed. It was made, it was offered by Mr. Fox that the group would be pooling money at some point in the future.
But to your recollection, and you were there, none of the Knowles stepped up and said, hey, we're in, we like this plan, correct?
No.
Okay. Right after the meeting concluded, the Knowles left camp, correct?
I don't know what they did.
How come? How come you don't know?
I wasn't in charge of attendance.
You weren't in charge of them?
No.
Okay. Would it surprise you that they left right away, right after this?
I guess perhaps it would surprise me.
Where did you go after the meeting?
Shortly after that meeting, I left.
You left. How soon after the meeting did you leave?
I would say within 30 or 45 minutes of the conclusion.
Okay. So you don't know if the Knowles stuck around or took off, do you?
I don't.
No more questions. Thank you for the testimony.
Brad, I believe you said you saw Eric the first time at about 3 p.m. on Saturday.
I think I said that's when I first was in the same circle as he was. I saw him prior to that, but that was the first time I was up close with him.
Okay. So you were able to observe Eric.
Yes.
You could tell us what he was wearing.
I don't recall what he was wearing.
Was it street clothes or camouflage, anything military, civilian?
I don't recall what. I think he had black pants on, but that is
Okay.
from recollection.
How about plate carriers?
I don't recall him having plate carriers.
Wouldn't you see, I mean, those are pretty big, aren't they?
Yes.
You would notice that if he had plate carriers on, right?
I would notice, but I don't recall if he did or not.
You saw a sidearm with him,
Correct.
holstered.
Mhm.
And where was he when you saw that?
By the shoot house in that vicinity.
Okay, did he have his medical bag at that time with him?
I do recall him having a med bag at one point. I don't recall if it was if it was at the shoot house when I first saw it.
Okay. But you didn't see him go through the shoot house that day?
No.
You didn't see him with a long gun?
No.
How can you explain other witnesses about 3 o'clock, Agent Mark, seeing him with a long gun right about the same time?
I'm going to check one of the questions, Judge.
Is this, when you came to this event on the 12th, did you sign in with your alias?
I did.
You signed in, everybody's signing, they're showing up and they're signing in. Is that a yes?
Yes.
And did you count how many people were on the sign-in list?
No.
When you signed in?
No.
Do you have the list of invitees to that Saturday at 5 o'clock meeting?
Judge, I think this is outside the scope of the questions asked by the jury.
In terms of the meeting for Saturday.
I was asking about the invitees that came up on Mr. Nunzio, who was invited and how'd they get there?
So the meeting relative to facilities. I understood the question directly and also not at the Saturday meeting or at the Sunday meeting. That's what Mr. Nunzio was asking about. You're asking about who was at the Saturday meeting covered that. You're asking if it was invited them or how they got there. You're asking that.
Do you know how people were invited and how they got there Saturday
To the FTX itself?
to the meeting at 5 p.m.
No, I do not.
for the video showing?
No, I don't.
Do you know how the other people were invited Sunday and how they got there?
I don't.
So you don't have the list of invitees from either day, do you?
I don't believe there's a list.
That's all. Thank you. Mr. Sack?
Thank you.
Mr. Wilson?
No, thank you.
Before we get there, the latest witness the excuse.
Yes, Your Honor.
Oh, I guess that is theoretical. Any other juror questions? Guess what we'll do is take a short break to allow you to determine if you have any further questions. And just again, knock at the door and just let the court staff know. I want some jurors. Okay, everyone can see that the jury is out of the courtroom, which is in recess until we wait off.
We're going to take a break at noon, Your Honor.
Yeah, Mr. Walker, the next witness is,
Put about 15, 20 minutes into that.
1 second, sorry.
No question.
Okay. Any idea how long the expected cross will be of Mr. McMahon? Do you know?
If any, I don't know.
The problem is that we can take our lunch break now, but it's traditionally we use 1 o'clock. I don't know how much time that's going to give you.
I think we lose money.
Okay. Then we'll bring the jury back in, let them know that we're going to proceed to lunch at 11:31. At 1 o'clock. Okay. All right.
Is Alvin instead of bringing them back in, or Your Honor?
Oh, any objection to that?
Not at all.
No objection.
I couldn't hear that.
Any objection, of course, staff simply lets the jury know it's lunchtime and to be back at 1 o'clock?
No objection.
Okay, there you go. I had a chance to talk to the attorneys in chambers, a lot on the record, just to generally talk about schedule. What I would anticipate this afternoon, and we have 2 witnesses left, I believe, correct, Mr. Hoffman?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And basically, the way that I would anticipate going this afternoon is we will have those 2 witnesses testify. Court has said a couple of times, I think I've said it sarcastically, I don't mean to be sarcastic, that the court certainly expects, as is common, that motions for directed verdict may be made or requested by the defense. That's something that obviously has to be analyzed by the court. It's not a 5-minute thing, is what I mean to say. So what I would anticipate, just so that everybody's aware, is that perhaps what will happen is that the 2 witnesses will testify, if the prosecution rests, we then turn to the defense if such a motion is going to be made. Depending on the complexity of it, will depend on how much time the court needs to be able to make a determination relative to that. Assuming it's complex, basically what I would do is I'll leave the rest of the afternoon, meaning that I would excuse the jury for the rest of the afternoon. If we say come back on the record, let's say at 4 o'clock or something, and for cases of determination, whatever it may be, that would be the end of the day. If the motion, this is, I have not seen it yet, I'm not making a presumption of the court's decision. I'm just saying, let's assume for a moment it is not granted for, just so that everyone is aware of the schedule going forward. If any of the defendants want to present a case, that will theoretically begin Thursday morning. If that were to take, let's say, until, I don't know, Friday morning at noon, let's say we go to lunch, right? I'm not going to tell the attorneys they have to come back and rush a closing argument at 1 o'clock on a Friday or 2 o'clock on a Friday. Because quite frankly, even if we were going to do that, it wouldn't leave very much time for deliberations anyway. So what would generally happen at that point, again, I would excuse the jury and just have them come back on Monday. The attorneys and I will work out jury instructions Friday afternoon, basically so that we had everything tied up, and then we would have everybody come back Monday morning, do closings, instructions, and then the jurors would begin their deliberations. Okay, so a couple of assumptions in that timeline, but that's generally speaking what I would do with the attorneys. So I just want to go over that with everybody else so that everyone's aware of the timeline. Mr. Wilson, anything for you on any of that?
No, sir.
Mr. Nunzio?
No, thank you.
Mr. Sack?
No, thank you.
Who's up next, Mr. Wilson?
Mr. McManus.
Okay, all rise. did not know it was going to be in my student. Decided to excuse you for lunch, so I apologize for that. That was not my intention, but I just recommend stay dry a little bit.
Garbage bags with just
Pardon me?
some garbage bags with just well.
Poncho quite if you'll recall, we're in the prosecution's case in chief. We completed a witness just prior to lunch, and Mr. Wilson, you're next.
Thank you, Judge.
Commissioner McManus?
Watch your step, please. Thank you.
Before you take a seat, you should be ready to hand. You swear that the testimony you're about to provide is true, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Go ahead and sit down. Mr. Wilson, as soon as Sergeant Back is on.
I'm sorry?
As soon as Sergeant Back is on.
No, yeah, no, I'm sorry, I wasn't aware.
That's okay.
Yep, no problem.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Can you introduce yourself to ladies and gentlemen on the jury?
Yes, Scott McManus, First Lieutenant of the Michigan Department of State Police, currently the post commander at the Houghton Lake Post.
Hey,
I'm sorry, Houghton Lake Post?
and Lieutenant, tell us a little bit about your experience in law enforcement when you got into it and kind of work us through the progression to where we are today, if you would.
Sure. Early in my career, believe it or not, I started here with the Antrim County Sheriff's Department. And then,
Are you a resident of Antrim County now?
I am.
Okay, go ahead.
And from being here at the Sheriff's Department, I worked for the Traverse City Police Department and then eventually got into the Michigan State Police back in 2004.
Tell us a little bit about your assignments from 2004 to today.
After getting in the Michigan State Police, I was posted at the Cadillac Post, Calcas, the Houghton Lake Post. And I worked a couple summers on Mackinac Island. Also, I worked on the Governor Snyder's protection detail, back in the uniform as a sergeant, the Traverse City Cadillac area. And then when Governor Whitmer became governor-elect, I was transferred down to Lansing and became her detail commander.
Tell us a little bit about the executive protection detail for the governor. I mean, what is it that the state of Michigan provides our sitting governor?
Us as an agency, Michigan State Police, we historically have always provided protection for the governor and their family while they're sitting with governors. Kind of everyone's familiar with the Secret Service on a federal level. We're similar to that, but at a state level. And we're all members of the Michigan State Police.
In terms of the detail, what's it comprised of? Is it, it's all Michigan State Troopers?
Correct. It's all uniform enlisted members, as we call them, enlisted members. Those that all started their career as uniform troopers, went through a recruit school. And whether they were a trooper or a sergeant or myself, I was a first lieutenant commander of the protection detail.
And, during the time that your troopers and sergeants are, protecting the governor, like what are some of the things that are done, to do that in terms of like, what are some of the activities or duties?
Sure. We're responsible of the safety of the governor and the extended family. That could be everything from taking care of the children, the first lady or first gentleman, extended family. And obviously, the governor is a primary role of keeping her punctual. We're 100% responsible for the transportation of her to and from events. She is, and I speak currently of our governor, she is not anywhere without someone from the detail.
Okay. The individuals that make up the detail, how are they selected?
Work performance, reputation in the department, just a level of professionalism, because we are an extension of our department as well as government at the state of Michigan. So it's.
Is this volunteer only?
They are selected. We do have a long list of those that would like to become members of the detail. And there is a vetting process, so we're able to select who we think would be the best fit for the detail.
Okay. Is the detail dangerous at all?
Everyone on the detail has an understanding what they're essentially signing up for. We do in general, getting into law enforcement, and that's to protect the life and property of the citizens of Michigan. But furthermore, being on the detail, We are responsible for the safety of the governor, and we'll continue to maintain that safety at any measures that we need to use.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the governor here in Antrim County. Are you familiar with, did she formerly have a residence or a cabin here?
That's correct.
Okay, can you turn around and take a look at, I think that's number 4, that's on the screen there. Let me make sure I got the right number. Yeah. I think that's number 4, I think page 1. Does that look familiar to you, Lieutenant McManus?
That depicts the area for summer residences is located throughout.
Okay. And when the governor or her family is in-house here in Antrim County, did your detail, was responsible for protecting her?
Correct. We were present with her if she's vacationed there at the cottage.
Okay. I want to take you back in time to April of 2020. On April 30th, did you become aware of an event at the Capitol?
That's correct.
Okay, and tell the ladies and gentlemen a little bit about how you learned about, what was going on at the Capitol that day and what you did.
Because of all the COVID restrictions, there was a demonstration at the Capitol in Lansing. We had received information that there was going to be a large gathering there to potentially protest the measures that were mandated as a result of COVID. And as a result of that, we did not come anywhere near or around the Capitol or Lansing that day.
Okay. On that day, were you in contact with Special Agent Henrik Impola of the Federal Bureau of Investigation?
That's correct.
And were the two of you coordinating that day?
Yes.
Okay. Moving off of that date, I'd like to move you to the month of August of 2020, and specifically August 29th. You mentioned that your detail protects the governor, her family, if they're in residence here in Antrim County, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And were you in contact with Agent Impola before that date, April 29th, about possible surveillance that was going to happen at the governor's summer cabin?
That's right. Myself and Agent Impola were in direct, routine, daily communications, and he was regularly updating me on anything that could potentially affect our operations.
Okay. And did you have to take any measures on the August 29th to change either the governor or the first family's schedule in any way?
I do recall doing so.
Why don't you tell the jury a little bit about that?
That particular day, Agent Impola informed me that some individuals may be conducting surveillance on the cottage which is depicted behind me. And at the time, the first gentleman was there as he frequented the cottage more so than the governor. After receiving that information, I contacted the first gentleman and advised him of the situation and requested that he leave the cottage until he hears from me further.
Okay. Hey, Lieutenant McManus, was that the only time that you were made aware of surveillance on the governor's cabin here in Antrim County?
That was the first incident, but I'm aware of a second as well.
Let me take you to September 2020, if I could, please, and specifically September the 12th. Is that a date that stands out in your mind, sir?
Correct.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about, did you have any interaction with Agent Impola either on or before that date?
I did.
Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, Agent Impola again informed me that the same group were returning back to the cottage in which is depicted behind me, belonging to the governor. And this particular day was nighttime surveillance. So given that piece of information, we ensured that the governor family was near and around the practice area.
Okay. I mean, we're up to 2 surveillances inside of a couple of months there. Is that correct? That you're aware of?
Less than that, but
okay. August 29th. Yeah, I'm sorry, less than 30 days and then September 12th. You're in charge of the detail, right?
At that time I was.
Okay. I mean, concerning to you at all?
Absolutely. The level of threats that we were vetting were pretty historic, meaning looking back, speaking with other detail commanders that have since a long time retired, they had not dealt with the level of threats that we were currently dealing with. And with the information that Agent Temple was furnishing me, it changed our outlook and how we did our daily operations.
Okay. Were you made aware of any operational security the groups were using?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Not in great detail, but go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I just was under the understanding with the information we're gathering that they were training to essentially kidnap the governor.
Okay. Had you ever faced that threat before?
No.
Okay. Were you apprised of the weaponry they were using?
Jackson,
Hearsay.
Join.
Not offered for truth of the matter asserted, but rather to allow the jury to understand why the lieutenant did what he did.
Relevance. Join.
Well, this is one of those, I can't see the features, so let me see features.
I'll withdraw this. Okay, thank you. And hey, Lieutenant, you're in charge of, you told us you're in charge of the Houghton Lake Post now, right?
That's correct.
Okay, and you served under Governor Snyder and Governor Whitmer both, correct?
That's right.
Okay. Had you ever seen anything like this in your experience?
As far as the,
The threat level that was posed?
nothing this specific or concentrated, no.
Okay. Just so we're clear, so when the governor of the first family is in residence in Antrim County, it's your troopers who are protecting her, is that correct?
It's, our team comprised of troopers and sergeants for the state police.
Thank you very much, sir. I'll yield the witness, Judge.
No questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Barnett.
No questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Sauer.
No questions, Your Honor.
Okay. Okay, to release this witness.
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Barnett.
Yes, Your Honor.
Jacob. Oh, sure.
Questions?
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll excuse you for a couple of minutes. You can also. Okay, the jury's out of courtroom. Thank you all for the reminder. We can be off until they come back. The jurors just have an opportunity to ask questions here, so what we do is send them back to the room, see if they have any, and then we'll go.
Understood.
Assuming they have none, though, all of the attorneys said they're okay releasing.
No objection. No objection.
Folks can be seated. Okay, staff indicated that there are no questions from the jurors, so we'll excuse this witness. So we agree.
Appreciate it.
All right, the jurors will bring them back in.
Thanks, Scott.
seated. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we look forward to any other questions, so we're going to move on to the next witness. Yes, good afternoon. We're going to actually have a seat in that chair right there. Before you do, stop and raise your right hand. You swear the testimony you're about to provide with the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. Okay, go ahead and have a seat. And once you get situated, if you start out by telling us your full name and spelling your last name.
My name is David Centella, Centala.
Mr. Walton.
Thank you, Judge. Good afternoon, sir. Can you tell us, introduce yourself to the ladies and gentlemen on the jury, please?
My name is David Centella. I'm the chief of the Elk Rapids Police Department.
Chief, how long have you served in that role?
A little over 5 years.
And what did you do before that?
I was a retired detective lieutenant out of the city of St. Clair Shores.
Okay. And tell us, if you will, a little bit about your experience before you joined the Elk Rapids Department.
I started off at Wayne County working in the county jails. After that, I was a Dearborn Heights cadet for a little while. After that, Hand Trainment Academy put me through the academy. I worked there for about 6 months, and then I stayed with the city of St. Clair Shores after that for about 24 years. I retired as a detective lieutenant in charge of investigations.
Tell us a little bit about the Elk Rapids Police Department. How many sworn officers are there?
There are 6 sworn officers, that's including me.
Okay. And are any of them deputized by the Sheriff's Department here in Antrim County?
We are all deputized.
Why don't you tell the ladies and gentlemen on the jury what that means?
It means we have the same arrest powers as a deputy. So there's the village of Elk Rapids and then the surrounding townships. We have the same arrest powers as a deputy would.
Okay. Are you familiar with Birch Lake?
I am.
Tell us why.
I live on Birch Lake.
Okay. How far are you familiar with Governor Whitmer's former residence on the lake?
I am.
Okay. And how far do you reside from her former residence?
I'm 3 houses down from that cottage.
Okay. If you turn around and look at what's up on the screen there, that's exhibit number 4 for the record. You see an icon on the west side of the lake there?
Yeah,
Is that a fair representation about where the governor's house is?
it is.
And are you north or south of that position?
I'm south of that.
Okay. If you will, can you pull up, which one is that? I'm sorry for the record. Yeah, 138, please. I'm going to show you another photograph here. Hey, Chief, does that look familiar to you, that building, that house?
It does.
Okay, and what is it?
It's
Who used to live there, I guess is my question, Chief.
the governor's cottage you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's my neighborhood, that's my street. I know, I've lived here for a while. So that's definitely the house that's 3 down from my house.
Okay, while she was there, did you ever meet her or the first gentleman?
I met the first gentleman, I think 1 time.
Okay, and kind of going back to your department here, and if there was a trouble call on Birch Lake, obviously that's outside of Elk Rapids, is that correct?
It's in Elk Rapids Township, not the village.
Not the village itself, okay. I mean, would your officers respond to a call for trouble there?
Absolutely.
Okay, and tell us why.
We'd be the closest car. 9 out of 10 times, we're going to be the closest car.
Okay, and how would you know about that? How would you know there was a trouble call?
We all share the same frequency, so we can hear the calls being dispatched out. We would be dispatched to that, there's no doubt.
Okay. Talking about the Antrim County Sheriff's Department, I mean, would they respond to a call for trouble there?
They would.
Okay, but they're obviously here in Bel Air. That's where they're based, correct?
Right. So most of the time, the vast majority of the time, they're on the other side of the county. So if there's an emergency run, we'd be the first car. This is literally 3 minutes away, less than that. 2 to 3 minutes away from our village.
Okay. You said you live 3 doors down, correct?
I do.
The south. Okay. If there was a disturbance at the governor's home and you were present, I mean, unless, for instance, hypothetically gunshots, what would you do?
I'd run towards I'd go towards the noise.
Okay. You live in that house with your family?
I do.
Thank you very much, sir. Nothing else, Judge.
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Barnett?
No questions, thank you.
Sorry.
No questions.
Okay. May this witness, oh, sorry. I wasn't even joking that time, but I did mess it up. We'll excuse the jurors for a couple of minutes to see if they have any questions. I'll ask the jurors. Okay, everyone can be seated. The record can reflect that the jurors are on that courtroom. We'll just take a break until they come back. So just so you're aware, jurors can ask questions now. So what we do is send it back to the jury room to see if they collect any. No, okay. And they don't, so that makes it pretty easy. I don't know if I got it around the room because I interrupted myself. Any issue with releasing this witness, Mr. Knight?
No objection.
Mr. Simon?
No objection.
Mr. Barnett?
No objection.
Okay, let's do that. Sir, you're good to go. Thank you for coming. The jurors will come back in. We'll rise for the tape. Okay, everyone can be seated. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We're welcome to go back.
Judge, thank you. The people rest.
So ladies and gentlemen, sorry to make you play a game of up down, but we need to take a short break to talk to the attorneys outside of your presence, just so we can figure out the schedule forward at this point. Okay, all rise. Give us practice if you can. Okay, everyone can be seated. The record can reflect that the jury is out of action. People requested, Mr. Nunzio, and Mr. Cyber, I have it up in my pad that we reserved. So help me to remember that if we get to that point. Okay, Mr. Nunzio, let me start with you.
Your Honor, this time, on behalf of William, Mr. Cyber's joining, we'd like to make a motion for directed verdict of acquittal at this time. Co-counsel Christine Nunzio would like to present that to the court. We have filed that brief with the court, so it is online at this present time. And it pleases the court. Ms. Nunzio would like to present that motion to the court at this time.
Mr. Cyber.
Judge, we would concur with this Nunzio's motion. As to defendant Mike Small, we also, we'd like to point out jurisdiction venue were not established by the prosecution as well. We have no aid from the county or state of Michigan. Thank you.
Mr. Barnett.
I'm going to ask for acquittal for the direction verdict. But maybe have some time to formalize my request. I had a shortened lunch for some reason today, put in the rain. I was just maybe 15 minutes if I could. Sure. In between or before Ms. Nunzio, for part of this, or Mr. Cyber. That we just need a short break just to write off a couple things that I'd like to cover.
Okay, I think what we'll do is this, hanging on to that, Ms. Nunzio, I think what I'll do is bring the jurors back, simply let them know that there are some mechanical or behind the scenes things that the court needs to discuss with the attorneys that are common in every case. It's generally how I phrase that so that it doesn't tip anyone's hand that there's any issue, but I want to let them know that it's not an afternoon off for us too. Because I want them to know that we're being respectful of their time. I'll excuse them for the day because it's a complex issue, it's a complex case, it's going to take us a while to work through those things. And then what we'll do is be in recess until, let's say, 2 o'clock, Mr. Barnett. That's 20 minutes from now. If you need additional time, that's perfectly appropriate. We'll adjust based on that. I'll certainly allow Ms. Nunzio to make whatever presentation she wishes at that time. And then Mr. Barnett, and then we'll discuss responses and those types of things after that. Okay, any issue with that plan from anybody?
No, but I haven't received the document Mr. Nunzio references. If he's got a hard copy, I'd appreciate it.
Okay, why don't we do this in the interim too, if we can email that to the parties, just so that they have it as well.
There's no internet right now on the public system, so I think that's the issue.
Okay.
Mr. Wilson's got a luck here on it.
I recall that exception.
I'll struggle through.
Let's get the folks on.
And we have no objection to the court system.
Mr. Satter.
No,
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Just for the record, we just submitted our concurrence.
Okay, thank you. Okay, everyone can be seated. The record will reflect the jury's second courtroom. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the rest of their case. For we say ACG, those types of things. The rest of their case. The next portion that we have to deal with is very discussions between myself and the attorneys that would occur outside of your presence. There may be some research that goes along with that, or it may take some time. And quite frankly, I'm not sure how long it will take, but it may be a while. So what I don't want to do is come back to the room, have it be an excessive amount of time, and then it diminishes what we can do this afternoon. So what I'm going to do at this point is excuse you for the rest of the day. We're going to work through whatever it is that we need to do, however long that takes. So I'd like to be back here at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning to start up like we have been. And if anything else comes up, we'll certainly notify you. Okay? So I'll rise to the jury. Everyone can be seated. And I think what we'll do is this, it's about 4 to 4 on the clock. Normally I try to rush back and breaks because the jury's here, but they're excused for the day. So I'm out here on a side of caution. let's take it until a quarter after, Mr. Barnett, that will give you some additional time to put some thoughts together. Hopefully we can connect the electrons and give you all a copy of whatever it
I
is.
think we got it. I think we got it, Bill. Yeah, we got it.
And that's fine. So what we'll plan on doing is come back at about 2:15. I'll go to Ms. Nunzio first, and then obviously after that, and I'll give you an opportunity as well. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay, anything for anybody before we break?
Not sure.
No, thank you.
Nope, seeing none? Okay, thank you.
Sustain a conviction, the people in their case in chief would have had to include testimony and or other evidence that William Knoll provided currency or other financial services. In the light most favorable to the people, there was no evidence or testimony supplied that William Knoll gave money, stocks, bonds, etc. to Adam Fox, Barry Croft, or Wolverine Watchman, the three threat streams outlined by Special Agent Impala. While there was testimony that Adam Fox asked for money for a baker, there was no actual testimony provided that William Knoll actually gave money or other currency to Adam Fox. Moving to financial services. To sustain a conviction, the people's case in chief must have included testimony and or evidence that William Knoll provided financial services. In the light most favorable to the people, there was no evidence or testimony that William Knoll gave financial services to Adam Fox, Barry Croft, or the Wolverine Watchman. For example, there was some testimony regarding setting up a 501c3 in order to procure money or essentially to hide how individuals were purchasing things. But there was no testimony that William Knoll offered to set up that 501c3 or that it was even his idea. Moving to lodging. In order to sustain a conviction, the people's case in chief must have included testimony or other evidence that William Knoll provided lodging. In the light most favorable to the people, there was no evidence or testimony that William Knoll gave or provided Adam Fox, Barry Croft, or the Wolverine Watchman lodging, a place to sleep, a place to have meetings, etc. For example, there was testimony that Ty Garbin offered and provided his property in Luther, Michigan, but William Knoll did not provide his house, tents, a camper, or any other means in order for individuals to lodge themselves. Moving to training. To sustain a conviction, the people's case in chief must have included testimony and or other evidence that William Knoll provided training. This requires strict construction of the statute. In the light most favorable to the people, there was no evidence or testimony that William Knoll provided Adam Fox, Barry Croftman with training, either by hosting a field training exercise, directing a field training exercise, scheduling a field training exercise, or leading any of the stations at a field training exercise. For example, there was no testimony that William Knoll instructed land navigation, medical or medic training, shoot or kill house training, close quarter combat training, live fire drills training, dry fire drills training, running and bounding drills, or tactical reloading drills. Specifically, there was testimony that Paul Bellard instructed the medical training in Cambria, Wisconsin, and that Dan Harris instructed the medical training in Luther. Additionally, there was some testimony regarding Steve Robinson's involvement in organizing the Cambria, Wisconsin training. There was testimony that CHS Dan taught land navigation in Luther, Michigan. There was testimony that Paul Bellard, Ty Garbin, CHS Dan, and UC Red led the shoot house or kill house trainings. There was testimony that the Wolverine Watchman and Ty Garbin hosted the Luther, Michigan FTX training. Moving to safe houses. In order to sustain a conviction, the people's case in chief must include testimony and or other evidence that William Knoll provided safe houses. In the light most favorable to the people, there was no evidence or testimony that William Knoll gave or provided Adam Fox, Barry Croft, or the Wolverine Watchman with safe houses. In fact, there were no testimony on any safe houses. Moving the court's attention to false documentation. To sustain a conviction, the people's case in chief must have included testimony or other evidence that William Knoll provided false documentation. In the light most favorable to the people, there was no evidence or testimony that William Knoll gave or provided Adam Fox, Barry Croft, or the Wolverine Watchman with false state identification cards, false passports, false credentials, false badges, false documents of authority, etc. In fact, there was no evidence taken regarding any false documents of any sort. Moving the court's attention to communications equipment. To sustain a conviction, the people's case in chief must have included testimony and or other evidence that William Knoll provided communications equipment. In the light most favorable to the people, there was no evidence or testimony that William Knoll gave or provided Adam Fox, Barry Croft, or the Wolverine Watchman with cell phones, radios, computers, tablets, or any other forms of communication equipment. For example, there was testimony that Special Agent Impola had provided the CHSs and undercovers with radios that were used on the alleged nighttime surveillance, but William Knoll did not provide those communications equipment. Turning the court's attention to facilities. To sustain a conviction, the people's case in chief must have included testimony and or other evidence that William Knoll provided facilities. In the light most favorable to the people, there was no evidence or testimony that William Knoll gave or provided Adam Fox, Barry Croft, or the Wolverine Watchman with his home or any other properties to Adam Fox. For example, there was testimony that Sean Fix provided his Belleville home for an alleged training and meeting. There was testimony that Ty Garbin provided his Luther, Michigan property for several Wolverine Watchman meetings and trainings, as well as the training that happened on September 12th and 13th. There was testimony that one or more of the Wolverine Watchman individuals provided a Munith property for FTX trainings. There was no testimony that William Knoll provided any facilities to Adam Fox, Barry Croft, or any other named individuals. Weapons. To sustain a conviction, the people's case in chief must include testimony and or other evidence that William Knoll provided weapons. In the light most favorable to the people, there was no evidence or testimony that William Knoll gave or provided Adam Fox, Barry Croft, or the Wolverine Watchman with weapons. For example, there was testimony that Sean Fix offered a Connex box full of weapons, but there was no other evidence regarding providing weapons to members of the Wolverine Watchman, Adam Fox, or Barry Croft. Lethal substances. To sustain a conviction, the people's case in chief must include testimony and or other evidence that William Knoll provided lethal substances. In the light most favorable to the people, there was no evidence or testimony that William Knoll provided Adam Fox, Barry Croft, or the Wolverine Watchman with any sort of poisons or chemicals. Moving to explosives. To sustain a conviction, the people's case in chief must include testimony and or other evidence that William Knoll provided explosives. In the light most favorable to the people, there was no evidence or testimony that William Knoll gave or provided Adam Fox, Barry Croft, or the Wolverine Watchman with explosives. There was testimony that Barry Croft and Dan Harris built an IED together in Cambria, Wisconsin, and that Barry Croft brought another type of IED to Luther, Michigan for that FTX, but William Knoll did not provide any explosives. Moving the court's attention to transportation. To sustain a conviction, the people's case in chief must include testimony and or other evidence that William Knoll provided transportation. In the light most favorable to the people, there was no evidence or testimony that William Knoll provided or gave Adam Fox, Barry Croft, or the Wolverine Watchman transportation or drove them anywhere. There was testimony that CHS Dan drove Wolverine Watchman members to Cambria, Wisconsin. There was also testimony that CHS Dan drove Adam Fox to the daytime surveillance on August 29th, 2020. There was testimony that Brian Higgins drove Barry Croft and Steve Robeson from their hotel in Big Rapids to the rally point in Elk Rapids for that nighttime surveillance, but there was no evidence provided that William Knoll drove Adam Fox, Barry Croft, or members of the Wolverine Watchmen. Moving the court's attention to any related physical assets or intangible property, in order to sustain a conviction, the people's case in chief must include testimony and or other evidence that William Knoll provided physical assets or intangible property. In the light most favorable to the people, there was no evidence or testimony that William Knoll gave or provided Adam Fox, Barry Croft, or the Wolverine Watchmen with any sort of devices, patents, applications, trade names, trademarks, service marks, copyrights, or trade secrets. Moving the court's attention to expert services or expert assistance. In order to sustain a conviction, the people's case in chief must include testimony and or other evidence that William Knoll provided expert services or expert assistance. In the light most favorable to the people, there was no evidence or testimony that William Knoll gave or provided Adam Fox, Barry Croft, or the Wolverine Watchmen with any expertise. For example, there was testimony that Paul Ballard, a former military vet with medic training, provided medic training to the Wolverine Watchmen, Adam Fox, and Barry Croft. Additionally, there was testimony that Ty Garbin was a proficient three-gun competitor and provided his marksman services to the Wolverine Watchmen, Adam Fox, and Barry Croft. There was no testimony that William Knoll was an expert in anything. Moving the court's attention to personnel. Generally speaking, this court does not have to follow federal interpretations of companion state statutes unless the Michigan Supreme Court instructs that the rules should be read as the same. However, the Michigan Supreme Court typically instructs courts to follow the federal interpretations of statutes if they mirror closely. As this court is well aware, we've repeatedly put before the court that the federal companion statute 18 USCA section 2339AB closely mirrors MCL 750.543B. If anything, the Michigan Supreme Court would only depart from the federal standard to provide greater due process protections. This concept has been echoed by Justice William Brennan in his Harvard Law Review article titled State Constitutions and the Protections of Individual Rights. Justice Brennan wrote that state courts cannot rest when they have afforded their citizens the full protections of the federal Constitution. He continued to say that state constitutions, too, are a font of individual liberties, and their protections often extend beyond those required by the Supreme Court's interpretation of federal law. While Justice Brennan has a liberal viewpoint, this concept has been adopted in a bipartisan way and acknowledged by the Sixth Circuit Chief Judge Jeffrey Sutton, who is a conservative and has repeatedly agreed with this concept in his books published in 2008 and 2021. This concept is also found in Michigan jurisprudence. For example, the recent reform of the juvenile life without parole statute case law shows that Michigan provides greater and stronger protections than the Eighth Amendment of the Constitution. In People versus Long, Michigan provided greater protections than the Fourth Amendment of the United States Constitution. It follows that Michigan, through its Constitution, should provide greater protections than the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution. While our Supreme Court has noted that constitutional challenges based on vagueness would be brought under the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment, and that those vagueness determinations should also take into consideration any judicial constructions of that statute. If you look at the federal companion statute, 18 USCA section 2339AB, the Supreme Court of the United States held that Congress cured any potential vagueness when it enacted the limiting definition in the IRTPA. The Supreme Court further stated that providing material support that constitutes personnel is defined as knowingly providing a person to work under a terrorist organization's direction or control, or to organize, manage, supervise, or otherwise direct the operation of that organization. That statute makes clear that personnel does not cover independent agency. That is from Holder versus Humanitarian Law Project 561 US 1 from 2010. Without defining personnel, the Michigan legislature and our judicial system are falling far below the federal standard and federal protections guaranteed by the 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution. In short, Michigan provides fewer protections than the United States Constitution. So we ask this court to adopt that, and I will continue to argue based on that assumption. To sustain a conviction, the people's case in chief must include testimony and other evidence that William Knoll provided personnel, meaning that he provided himself or others to work under Adam Fox, Barry Croft, or the Wolverine Watchman's direction or control, or to organize, manage, supervise, or otherwise direct the operations of Adam Fox, Barry Croft, or the Wolverine Watchman. In the light most favorable to the people, there is no evidence or testimony that William Knoll gave or provided himself to Adam Fox, Barry Croft, or the Wolverine Watchman. The testimony revealed that William Knoll was not at any of the pertinent planning meetings. While the people do believe that the June 6, 2020 Dublin, Ohio meeting counts towards the general umbrella of the plot, that was far too back in time to count towards this plot. The plot had developed quite a bit since June 6 all the way up until September. Outside of Adam Fox's unsupported statements, there was no evidence that William Knoll actually met with Adam Fox. In regard to the pertinent planning meetings, William Knoll was not present at the following: any of the numerous planning meetings and trainings in Munith, Michigan with the Wolverine Watchman, at any of the Vac Shack meetings, Adam Fox's place of employment and residence, the planning meeting at Peebles, Ohio, which was on June 18th, 2020 with Barry Croft and Adam Fox, the planning meeting at Cambria, Wisconsin on July 11th, 2020, after the FTX, which took place at Dino's Diner. William Knoll was not at the planning meeting in Belleville, Michigan on August 1, 2020, Sean Fick's residence with Adam Fox. William Knoll was not at the planning meeting or the daytime surveillance in Elk Rapids, Michigan on August 29th, 2020 with Adam Fox. Additionally, there's a leadership component to personnel. There was no evidence that William Knoll was in any leadership position for Adam Fox, Barry Croft, or the Wolverine Watchman. I have attached an exhibit that outlines. So there was testimony that Joe Morrison, Pete Musico, Ty Garvin, and Paul Beller were in the top leadership of the Wolverine Watchman. There was also testimony that CHS Dan was the XO, or second in command, for Wolverine Watchman. There was testimony that Barry Croft was the leader of the 2nd Continental Army and that Adam Fox was the Michigan commander for that. There was some testimony that Steve Robeson played some part in the 3% Patriot Militia leadership, as well as Barry Croft and Adam Fox. There was no evidence that William Knoll played any leadership role in the above stated. There was testimony that Adam Fox was one of the main 3 threat streams and that he had a group of individuals. There was testimony that Sean Fick was Adam Fox's XO, or second in command. At no point did Adam Fox refer to William Knoll as a commander or an XO. Focusing specifically on Adam Fox's team, there was no evidence presented that William Knoll swore Adam Fox's oath. There was testimony that Sean Fick swore that oath to Adam Fox in front of the Wolverine Watchman. Specifically with CHS's Dan's testimony, he narrowed down Adam Fox's kill squad. CHS Dan stated that Fox believed his kill squad included CHS Dan, Adam Fox, Dan Harris, Caleb Franks, Ty Garvin, and Brandon Caserta. The Knoll brothers were not listed as a part of this kill squad. There was also lengthy testimony regarding the FAFO chat. Special Agent Impola testified that the FAFO chat was also referred to as the operator's chat. William Knoll was not part of the FAFO chat. The individuals on the FAFO chat were Adam Fox, UC Red, Dan Harris, CHS Dan, UC Mark, Caleb Franks, Paul Bellard, Sean Fix, and a Michael, last name unknown, but was not identified to be Michael Knoll. There are other considerations that this court has to evaluate according to the people's theory. Specifically, the people have argued that participation in the FTX trainings counts towards material support. Participation in trainings is not one of the enumerated items of material support. This should not be confused with providing training. Strict construction of the statute requires that a defendant, in order for a defendant to be guilty under the training aspect, they must have provided training. In order for the people to prevail on the theory that participation in an FTX is enough, it has to be under their personnel. Assuming that William Knoll was a part of this, William Knoll had to have known that Adam Fox's plan, essentially having that knowledge requirement when he was participating in training. There was testimony that William Knoll at best was told of Adam Fox's training around 5:40 p.m. with People's Exhibit 181. This is after William Knoll participated in the alleged shoot house that UC Red testified to. Specifically, UC Red testified that Ty Garvin constructed this to symbolize the governor's summer home. There was no testimony that William Knoll knew that that kill house or shoot house was to symbolize the governor's summer home. Additionally, that testimony was not corroborated by UC Mark, Undercover Dan, or Special Agent Impola. Another consideration that this court must determine is the nighttime surveillance or recon. Nighttime surveillance or recon is not one of the enumerated items listed in the material support definition. The only way for the people to prevail on this theory is under personnel. Under the prosecution's theory, not only was there no testimony that William Knoll did anything in UC Mark's vehicle other than look around, this would fall short and fail that William Knoll was acting under the control of Adam Fox or Mark. It's not clear from the testimony that Adam Fox actually directed UC Mark's car what to do that evening. There was testimony from Undercover Mark that Adam Fox tasked Mark's car as well as CHS Dan. Undercover Red testified that he did not hear Adam Fox task the car, but that CHS Dan did task Undercover Mark's cars under Adam Fox's direction. Undercover Mark testified that even though he had a recording device on, the recording device did not pick up Adam Fox tasking Mark's car. The court has to determine whether or not nighttime surveillance or recon in participating in trainings is enough for material support. Defendant William Knoll stands on the fact that when a defendant stands to be convicted under one of two theories, one of them is permissible and the other is not, that conviction demands a reversal because a defendant cannot be convicted under an impermissible theory. We cannot determine why a jury would convict if two theories are outlined. Without this court limiting personnel to the federal statute and making sure that my client's due process rights are protected, there is a risk that he could be convicted under an impermissible theory of law. We're requesting that this court dismiss all of the sub-elements that I've outlined I will give it credit to the prosecution that unless this court adopts the federal definition for personnel and that limiting factor that the United States Supreme Court ruled under Holder versus Humanitarian Law Project, that personnel could go to the jury if there's not that requirement that they are someone who operates directly under. So I ask that the court grant that directing verdict at least for financial securities, currency, financial services, lodging, training, safe houses, false documentation, facilities, weapons, lethal substances, explosives, transportation, physical assets or intangible property, expert services or expert assistance. And lastly, that you adopt the federal protection under personnel and dismiss under personnel as well. Thank you.
Mr. Sadler.
Judge, we'd just like to adopt all of Ms. Nunzio's statements to the court on behalf of Mr. Michael Null. Once again, pointing out they lack jurisdiction in venue as there's multiple activities outside of Antrim County, but we don't talk about Antrim County. On those basis, we'd adopt Ms. Nunzio's statements, and we'd ask for a directed verdict dismissing Mr. Michael Null from this action.
Okay. On behalf of William Null, we offer no objection, concur with him adopting as to Mike Null, insert his name to our brief as well. No objection.
Okay. Mr. Barnett, let me go to you.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to incorporate by reference the arguments made, save some time, as they're made in general, the points of law, and as far as they can go without comparing them to Mr. Molitor's case. So I'd just like to have the court understand I'm moving for a directed verdict at this time for an acquittal. Just before I go into that, it would just as a formality, and I have no new reasons. I just think it's important that I re-up and ask the court to reconsider. I did make a couple of polite requests for mistrial earlier. One was for the prejudice caused by the what I felt was egregious misrepresentation of evidence. It was corrected. And also the prejudice that occurred with the short video clips. The court allowed me to, and I appreciate that under 106, to expand those video clips in the audio fashion. I just have a concern and wish to ask the court to revisit those after the court's heard all the evidence and maybe would have a different perspective whether under the legal standard that could be looked at. I'm just asking for it as a formality. I have no new reasons. I think it's important at this stage to have the court reconsider that. So as to the motion for a directed verdict, I do not believe venue has been shown here as to material support or resources. Nothing material happened here or in Wexford or Lake counties as may relate to the pending charges in this court. And I'm specifically referring to count one. Count one is rejected by the court at this point. Obviously, count two would go along with that. Specifically, Eric Molitor also had no knowledge, no intent for each one of these immaterial resources or didn't do them at all. Financial securities, there's no testimony or evidence exhibits about any financial securities or services, not even $1. There's no lodging. There's no training. He's trained no one. He provided no safe houses to anyone, no false documentation, no identification evidence was presented, so no false IDs, no communication devices as communication devices are looked at, communicating to one another. No facilities, nothing happened at the Eric Molitor home. index weapons were provided knowingly with intent to provide material support or resources. No lethal substances, no explosives, no personnel, and I would ask the court again to revisit and consider not proceeding with any change of what's in Michigan law as to the instructions. I know we're not to the instructions yet, but I'm sure the court's going to find those informative. And what your prior ruling has indicated to include personnel, as I would ask the court to reconsider that and go back to what the legislators have provided in Michigan as to instructions and how they make sense with the charges. They had every opportunity to include personnel, and they chose not to. I think that's deliberate, and that we should consider honoring and standing by the legislators' decision to not include that. And they knew the federal law at that point. And personnel, obviously, Eric has not provided any personnel under the evidence. He did not provide himself with any intent at all to commit these alleged harmful acts. He provided no transportation. I'm looking next at physical assets because I'm sure there will be an argument made by the prosecution that a duplicate video, and once we look at the bigger picture, the beautiful picture that Mr. Fox took was all they needed. First of all, they already had realtor.com pictures all the way around. The attack was allegedly amphibious, and those pictures came directly from the app that was on the phone of CHS Dan, and also on the phone of Adam Fox. That was revealed, and my exhibit actually brought to light exactly what was on that. Assets have to have some value. So we've got all these pictures that Adam Fox took that are these short little video clips. Any of those could be freeze framed. We've got a fleeting video that goes through, and the fleeting video does nothing. It adds nothing. It has no value. If there's somebody that owns stocks and they go to zero value, it's obviously not an asset. It has to have some value of consequence. It's got to be material. They can't just divide the two parts of the statute, ask the court to ignore the common sense determination of materiality. So the video that was taken, if we just took it away from the equation, these guys, they lose nothing on the Attorney General side. It's nothing. They don't have any difference in this case whatsoever. It has no value. You look at the RF device that was given at the home of Eric, who's talking about it already, showing it off. Look what I have. Before he got on in the car, before he heard crazy talk from Adam Fox about blowing up her boat, he'd already agreed to bring it. And the Fox kept pestering him to bring it. But he didn't know what was going on at that training on the 12th. He's not inside on any of it. There's been no evidence that he did anything but just his usual routine training, or what was the same training everybody else did of those 29 folks that weren't arrested. He was involved in innocent conduct that day. There's no proof that anything happened because of the RF device. One person's phone was discovered, Jenny Pease. She still had a meeting at 5 o'clock that day when they're showing videos of explosives. You take that RF device, which we don't even know if it worked. They brought no expert testimony to support that. That's their burden. It's a toy. It's a $50, $60 toy that Mr. Molitor bought for security reasons that had no value as well. So we have two things that have no value. That's down in Lake County anyway, and there's not that nexus at all to Antrim County. He didn't go to that training thinking they're going to be training to do something to the governor, blow up the boat, snatch and grab, anything. He had heard nothing in between the 29th and when he went to this training. He had heard nothing that this thing was even a thing. And he went there with innocent purposes. It's what he does. He trains, he competes in this way. He was doing what he does all the time. which is weapons proficiency. They don't have any evidence otherwise. So there's not a connection with the RF device to any intent, and that he was knowingly or knew that it was being used for some evil purpose. And what they had was a couple of people waving it around. There was, I think, evidence that Jenny P's phone buzzed. They don't have who did that. They don't say Eric did it. And again, she was not revealed as a bad person, as somebody would be informing for the government. And they just told her, which were the rules apparently, take your phone back to your car. There was nothing more than that. And these people all signed in. If they had an intent to do something nefarious and or evil, I would bet they wouldn't sign in, put their names on it as they come in the door. Eric signed in. The folks that testified from the government that were there signed in. So the word knowingly appears in the statute more than once. Requires, it shows up in the instruction and or instructions. The knew, K-N-E-W, he knew, had the intent to influence or affect the government, to, he had needed to have intent to coerce, intent to threaten harm, and knowingly take actions to do those things. The evidence is not there that he knowingly, that he had that intent. This instruction is almost bizarre because it does read that you could even if you do the felony at the bottom, it still comes around. It's asking for intent again at the bottom of the instruction. It reads that you can, even if you commit the felony, that it gets erased at the bottom when intent gets talked about as to coercion, threatening harm, influencing or affecting government, or the short list that goes beyond that. So it's quite an instruction that would be helpful for the court, even at this point, and for a jury if we were to get that far. So Eric was not a party to this plan. Sounds like it got it put in place in September. He's not at any meetings the entire time. No meetings, no one training, which they can't pin on him that he had any information of anything. In those two meetings in the end were two that he wasn't even invited to, or they don't have proof that he was. So he took a video. It was upon Adam's task. We can understand why that was done, because everyone under the sun that came in here proclaimed Adam's dangerous nature. It's not the state doing it, it's Adam. Adam did it. He's a civilian. And if the court looks at the big umbrella here, which most of it came in, it makes sense, at least it did to me, that the court and or jury knows that there's a big umbrella here and that there's tiny things that Eric has done. There are two things, just a video and the RF device. Again, those don't have value and didn't move the needle of this case whatsoever. It is minimal and a duplicate video. Look at the pictures that the FBI turned over on Mackinac for the Mackinac Island residents. They were okay to do that, to give right to Adam Fox. They were okay to drive everybody up here. It's just looking in comparison. It shows that the video, out of all the pictures and the just blank nature of it, even Agent Impola testified that that video doesn't help because they needed all of the security, the cameras, all that extra stuff that he listed off made that video worthless. You just can't take a video of somebody's house and use that for your plan. You have to do way more. Which door? I didn't see even a door on the front side of, I'll call it front side from the road. There's no doorway there. Doesn't help. Where's the alarms? You know, what's the schedule? All these things that weren't shown by a simple video. It's just the tip of the iceberg. And anybody could find this thing. The picture's been on the Wolverine Watchman page. It was apparently in the newspaper, including an address, which I cannot believe. It's on the realtor.com. Anyone can plug that in, and apparently it was plugged in using the realtor.com app that came to light. First time, Your Honor, in the court, in this court, even in the district court, it didn't come to light, but it came to light that's what was used. Those were the pictures already available from the lakeside. Nothing was even going to happen from the street side, so it provided nothing. It can't be material, especially considering the Mackinac Island pictures that were in depth. They had maps, trails, where the locks were. And the RF device, Your Honor, which was not an infrared device, it was a radio frequency that may or may not have worked, was provided for innocent purposes outside the car on August 29th. And again, Eric agreed at that time to bring the device. So the prosecutor has the burden in this case. At this point, we do look at what's the evidence in the light most favorable to the prosecutor, and they still have shortcomings on venue, intent, and materiality. The AG's evidence was not dependable. There was a huge mistakes that occurred. Agent Nicola had one that was monumental. You see, Mark had inconsistent testimony. CHS Dan, it's not credible whatsoever. You see Red, who we took a break when I brought up the issue of training. That put into question his testimony. We have serious shortcomings with the testimony provided. The third-party statements that were admitted by Adam Fox, not reliable, unsupported, not credible. The part that 5-6 days after this, they were still trying to get Eric pulled back in. No extreme shit was to be counted upon for Eric Molitor barricade. They never doubled back at the meeting. There's no evidence on the 12th or 13th. They went back to him, Eric, here's what's going on. Will you be a driver? Will you be a medic? Nothing. They have no evidence on that. They never went back. Everything's protected by the First Amendment or was said under duress and or for Eric's safety. It makes sense. You look at how afraid and scared Dan was. All of them were worried for their safety. They do request an acquittal. Eric is the molehill in comparison to a mountain here. We do seek a dismissal. It's not worthy to move further, Your Honor. Even the personnel, nothing done with intent. So we would submit to the court as an argument that insufficient evidence was provided. Eric's in a vacuum here. He didn't provide the video. He had the video camera thrown in front of him, and he acted as a mechanism to take it. And again, the RF device was for innocent reasons. A directed verdict should be entered at this point, and an acquittal should be entered. And again, I would incorporate Ms. Nunzio's arguments as they could and should relate to Eric Molitor as well. Thank you.
Mr. Walton, you in terms of time to respond?
Yeah.
You want to respond now?
Sure.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
As I indicated, I would give the people time to respond given the filing thing.
No worries. We're ready. Thank you very much. Okay. And not to be perfunctory, but really, I think, the issues that are kind of presented to the court here are rather straightforward. The first question is, what's the standard that we ought to apply? And we all know what it is. Defendant's motion for directed verdict is whether viewing the evidence the light most favorable to the prosecution, the evidence would allow a reasonable person to find guilt proven beyond a reasonable doubt. That's People versus Hampton from 1979, 407 Mish 354. So, kind of with that as our standard, let's take everybody one at a time here. First of all, the venue question, I think that resolves pretty simply. And MCL 762.8, whenever a felony consists or is in the culmination of two or more acts done in the perpetration of the felony may be prosecuted in any county where any of those acts were committed, or in any county that the defendant intended the felony or the acts done in preparation of the felony to have an effect. Okay, and case law that follows the statute tells us that acts is not to be confused with elements. I mean, these are, any act in furtherance of it, it can be less than an element. I mean, it can be, anything done in furtherance of that felony that's desired. And then really, the or that follows the statute is very helpful in this instance. Or in any county that the defendant intended the felony or acts done in perpetration of the felony to have an effect. Obviously, the felony that was going to occur is the act of terrorism here in Antrim County, and it was going to result in the deaths of Michigan State troopers in the Elk Rapids Police Department officers that arrived, and any Antrim County Sheriff's Department or Michigan State troopers that happened to be on patrol. I mean, clearly the evidence has demonstrated it was a terroristic act. It was, meant to, quote from the jury instruction, which is 38.3A. Excuse me. God bless. Intended to intimidate or coerce a civilian population or influence the effect or conduct of government or a unit of government through intimidation or coercion. This whole thing was because they hated our government. It's just that simple. I mean, we spent a lot of time on the ideology of Bill Null and Mike Null and Eric Molitor. And the reason that's important is for motive. And they start off in a position pre-COVID, they do not like the government, and they don't want anybody telling them what to do. And that's a very powerful identifier in terms of when the court may ask itself, well, gee, was this, did they really intend to help Adam Fox? Did they really intend to help Barry Croft in their plan to attack here on Birch Lake? And without a doubt, the weakest point, if you will, in the wheel, or the spokes that come together in the hub. That was the place that they knew was better doing it there than in Lansing. Adam Fox talked about a running gun battle down in Lansing and what that would have been like. They never would have gotten out alive. And also would have been better than up on Mackinac Island at the summer residence of the governor. And they picked, tactically, or strategically, they picked a very good location out of the three they were considering. So in terms of the venue, what goes on down in Dublin, what goes on in Cambria, what goes on in Peoples, what goes on in Luther. Those acts are acts in furtherance of the felony that they intended to, commit here in Antrim County. And I think the venue issue resolves quite easily. Kind of moving on to, first of all, Adam, can I have Exhibit 58, please? And in Exhibit 58, and it's probably just easier to look in your book, Judge. I don't know if you still got it or not, but no worries. I mean, it's the Croft, he's telling you're all terrorists. I mean, what's going on down in Dublin, Ohio is, it's a meeting of the terrorists. And they want to upset the U.S. government. It's an extension, if you will, of January 6th. I mean, they are not happy with the U.S. government. They're not happy. And, Croft is saying, get after your governors. And that's Croft's drumbeat is, the governors are the ones we got to go after. And again, instead of drawing the court's attention to the screen, I mean, if you look at Exhibit 58, that's Croft saying you're all terrorists, okay? And who's sitting in the audience? Well, Mr. William Knoll is, okay? So, later on in the Exhibit 61 is Adam Fox talking about, hey, we need to take hostages, okay? I mean, so it's not like Bill Knoll is sitting in the room and he's, shocked and appalled at what he's hearing. I mean, remember the text messages that we entered about Bill Knoll going to Dublin was, are you going to Dublin, for the protests, or are you going for other reasons? And he's going for other reasons because he got invited by Mike McDonald. That was another exhibit we admitted. And, the purpose of Dublin is very clear before anybody gets there. I mean, if you remember, even the Wolverine Watchmen, they didn't go to Dublin because they thought it was a setup. They thought they were going to get arrested. And, be that as it may, I mean, we know what happened in Dublin because we, got the exhibits in through evidence. So the kind of moving off of Dublin, and then also, keep in mind Bill Knoll in the Dublin meeting says, I agree with everybody here. That's after Barry Crofts had his say and after Adams Fox had his say. And what I do want to show the court, though, is Exhibit 83. Can you pull that up, Adam, please? And this is a wire communication. And, there's this lack of connection sometimes, if you will. Bill Knoll is kind of the talker, okay? And Mike Knoll's rather, maybe more introverted, but, be that as it may, this wire chat is, June 30th through July 1 interchange between Dan and Fox, and is in as much as they want to call it unsupported co-conspirator statements. This is evidence, and if the court remembers on this, there's a question. There's a text message that's in as an exhibit also. That's like it's Bill Knoll saying, "I got a meeting with the MLM bro." Tomorrow, and in June 30th, and then Dan in July 1 asked, "Hey, how'd the meeting go?" Good, no brothers on board. At the bottom, just a 2-man addition, bro, but they're down and want to train with us coming to Wisconsin, so you'll meet them then. So, the evidence is quite on this, and I'd ask the court to think a little bit about. You don't do things by mistake in life. I said it during voir dire. I mentioned it in opening with the jury. You don't wind up in a different state at a training that involves, offensive, tactical maneuvers by mistake. I mean, there's a reason Mike Knoll's taken, part of his July and getting himself to Wisconsin to train at Cambria with his brother. And can I have 96, please?
I'm not ready.
Thank you, Adam. Okay, and the point that I try to draw to the court with that exhibit is, we don't do things by accident in life. And there's a reason why Bill Knoll and Mike Knoll are there with Barry Croft and Adam Fox, because Bill Knoll was down in Cambria. And remember the testimony, and this is something we're going to have to remind the jury of, evidence comes in many different forms. And the testimony was that Bill Knoll received text messages from Mike Knoll while he was in Dublin, hey, are you okay? You know, he was checking on him. Mike was checking on Brother Bill. And that message was actually deleted from Mike Knoll's phone, but it was found on Bill Knoll's phone. And, you know, Mike Knoll's fully informed of, you know, what's going on down in Dublin, and then he winds up in Cambria. So in even more evidence of, you know, Mike Knoll's, you know, knowledge and participation in the whole thing and his desire for a certain outcome, which was the death of, you know, the state troopers guard, the governor, and the, you know, and anybody else who got in their way, and probably the death of our governor too, to be quite frank. I mean, there's no way that attack was going to happen at that cabin. No one was coming out alive in that house. And, you know, when you think about an 8-man team going up against the security detail, you know, they would have made a mess. It would have been a horrific event, you know, on par with, you know, some of the greatest, you know, domestic terrorism acts that we've witnessed. I mean, they knew what they were doing in Cambria. And they knew that because Bill was down in Dublin, and Bill and Mike are tied at the hip. And yes, they are communicating. We showed that very clearly through the exhibits. And they wanted a certain outcome, okay? So, and that outcome was a terroristic act. And in fact, even if they weren't going to be operators in Adam Fox's plan, they were. I mean, the evidence, and I'm going to argue to the jury if I get that far, not being presumptuous here, they were going to be operators. They were going to be on the business end of a rifle when that attack went up against the governor at her cabin, okay? And but even if they weren't going to be, what they did in training with Adam Fox, and this is where I think the rubber really hits the road, Judge, is, you know, we are a pack people. I mean, we are a species that thrives off of the benefit of being with a group of people, okay? And when you think about what they provided to Adam Fox, they provided gravitas. The Knoll brothers did, okay? I mean, they provided a certain amount of credibility to Adam Fox when they're in Cambria, when they're in Luther, when they're on the nighttime surveillance. I mean, you know, these are a couple of serious guys. I mean, you know, make no mistake about it. I mean, when they show up in Luther and, you know, they're bringing themselves and they're willing to participate in the training and they're willing to go on the nighttime surveillance, they're emboldening Adam Fox, okay? They're you know, they're providing him a level of support that now he can say, and he does, and our exhibits demonstrate that in the different text messages Adam Fox sends out. No, I got MLM on board. I've got, you know, the Knoll brothers. They're a 2-man addition to the team. I mean, you know, they're providing material support in the form of personnel, okay, is you know, the short version. Bill provided himself in Cambria, Luther, and nighttime surveillance. Mike did so at Cambria, Luther, and the nighttime surveillance. Bill also, you know, when he's down there in Dublin and Barry Croft and his Second Continental, you know, Army, and then he's going to make, you know, Adam Fox the Michigan Regiment commander. And they're down there, and then, you know, in a matter of 10, 21 days, now they're with Fox in Cambria training with them. You know, I mean, you know, actions speak louder than words is what I would suggest. So, you know, can I see 177 and 178, please? Those are 2 pictures, I think, Adam.
Were those 2
No, I think they were, weren't they? I'm sorry, you're right. The video, please. 176. Thank you for correcting me, Judge. Ms. Nunzio invites you to only, you know, look at the personnel aspect of the statute. Nowhere in the statute does it say I got to hand you a piece of equipment. Okay. Nowhere in the statute does it say I've got to hand you a weapon and provide, you know, what I mean, when they show up and they're all kitted up like that, and they got their ballistic armor on, they got their sidearm, they got their their main weapon, their primary weapon, and the rifle, and that is providing equipment to Adam Fox. That is providing weaponry to Adam Fox. Adam Fox is right there. I mean, he's standing there. He's like, these are two of my guys. These are two of my guys. And, here they are. They're all kitted up. They're ready to go. I mean, their production of that equipment, even though they don't give it to Adam Fox to use and operate himself, I mean, it is at essentially Adam Fox's disposal. So I invite the court not to look at that in terms of, the equipment, the physical assets, the weaponry, as, those are things that they are providing and material support to Adam Fox. When you think about kind of what I said earlier about, their presence is a benefit to Fox. It allows him to recruit, allows him to grow, group mentality. Also, I just touch on OPSEC for a minute, operational security and practicing it and promoting it, that is a form of avoiding apprehension too. I mean, that's part of the statute, and that makes it more difficult to, people to, for law enforcement to know about an event like this. I looked over a transcript from, I think it was July 27th, and it's my understanding that the court ruled there that personnel can include oneself. So I'm not going to disturb that. I mean, I'm going to operate under that understanding there. In terms of moving to Mr. Molitor, a little bit easier, I think, from a couple different perspectives. Before I go there, I mean, again, people don't wind up in places by mistake very often. And, I use the Cambria as one example. You don't wind up in a different state doing something like they're doing by mistake. You're there because you understand and you appreciate, what it's all about. The idea that, Bill Knoll and Mike Knoll were like a couple of pieces of luggage in the truck with undercover Mark that night, it belies common sense. There's a reason you don't get into that package of that surveillance team that night in 3 cars and coordinated efforts, and each car is going to have a different assignment without being trusted by people like Adam Fox and Barry Croft. I mean, it's not a mistake that they are there. I mean, they are there because, I'll just say it, they're the muscle, man. I mean, they're the muscle, and they're there because they add value to Adam Fox, and they do it just through their own presence. Then you kind of take it to the next step. Well, what is that vehicle doing? Well, it's been tasked to run, essentially, as Red said today, counter surveillance or the lookout car. Okay. And you don't have to do very many bank robberies before you realize that a lookout has value. A lookout has value to, or a getaway driver has value to a bank robber. And no, they had value to Adam Fox. So, I'll move off of the Knoll brothers now and move to Mr. Molitor. He essentially makes 3 arguments. One is venue. I apply my earlier comments to the court on that, and the statute, I think, is pretty clear. Materiality, classic question of fact. Classic question of fact for the trier of fact. Was the support something that was material or beneficial to Adam Fox? And now, understanding that there is a threshold we have to meet, but given the where I started, which is we look at things in the light most favorable to the people at this point, and and when you do that, materiality of he's actually given Fox some equipment. He's actually turned it over, and I could make the same argument that when he's using it and he's got it up in the air and he's wanding the area around the trailer and the medical tent. That Mr. Fox enjoys the benefit of that type of operational security being provided by Mr. Molitor. So Mr. Fox asked for him to bring it, I think, on 4 different occasions, thrice through text messages and also during the daytime surveillance on August 29th. Mr. Molitor provides itself on the date. I suggest the facts don't support Mr. Barnett's rendition of the, poor Eric Molitor is scared and he's horrified by what's going on. And when he gets in the car on August 29th, I mean, he participates in this thing because he kind of has to. And then, and the reason I say that is because what does he do, less than 14, 15 days later? He's back at Luther and he is participating actively. He's acting as the medic and he's also bringing security equipment in. So to suggest that, Eric Molitor is some victim in this thing and it's a big misunderstanding, that I think is, it flies in the face of the evidence. He provides personnel really on a couple different occasions. One, again, he's there with Adam Fox. He's giving Adam Fox legitimacy. Adam Fox can now market, I've got a medic, just like the Wolverine Watchmen used to have a medic in Paul Bella, who left in July. Now I've got a replacement for that person because some of the Wolverine Watchmen come over and become operators with Adam Fox. And now he's got his own medic. And whether he's down for the extreme things or not is of no moment. The question is, did he provide something to Adam Fox, knowing what Adam Fox's plan was? And that kind of is where I want to end. The idea that the Knoll brothers didn't know what Adam Fox is about, or that Mr. Molitor didn't know what he was about, flies in the face of the evidence. And you never know where evidence comes from that might be, useful to a trier of fact. Mr. Toth, the blueberry farmer from Jackson County, he knew what the plan was here in Antrim County to the extent that they were going to attack, blow up the bridge, and try to get the governor. And these three men are trying to market, at least to you currently, that they didn't know what Adam Fox was about. And I suggest that flies in the face of common sense and both the evidence that we have in this case. And I'd ask you to deny the motions for directed verdict. Does the court have any questions?
No.
Thank you very much.
While there's no case law on this statute, it is very clear that the legislatures wanted to criminalize individuals giving material support to bad actors. They didn't want to criminalize bad actions because that's a separate crime. The crime is providing stuff to bad actors. William Knoll did not provide weapons. There was no testimony that he said that he would give his weapons to Adam Fox. I don't think there was even testimony that Adam Fox touched any of William Knoll's gear, kit, weapons. And that goes for equipment as well, Your Honor. I think that it's going beyond the scope of what the legislature intended to criminalize here. And frankly, following that federal interpretation to protect my client's due process rights would require that personnel be dismissed as well. So I am asking this court to individually go through each sub-element and to make a determination on which sub-elements under material support definition will be handed off to the jury. Thank you.
Very, very briefly, Judge. Prosecution gives a great story. Problem is the facts give away their story. 100%. And I echo what Ms. Nunzio has to say here. Judge Adam Fox and Barry Croft clearly were off the wall. And they clearly used these two gentlemen's good reputation to try to bolster theirs, which I've had people do that to people throughout the history of time. But just because somebody says there was somebody and you don't verify it, that doesn't mean they are. Agent Embla got up and gave us 8-9 days full of testimony saying FTXs were not illegal. So why are we even talking about the FTXs? Judge, what we have here is, like Ms. Nunzio said, we have no actions on behalf of Michael Long. None. We have no meetings with him. We have nothing that points that he had knowledge before this alleged car ride. We have no actions during the car ride. We have no knowledge We have nothing pointing to Michael Nall being guilty of giving any material support to the federal government, to any DHS, to any undercover, to any FBI agent, to anybody. We've got him on a car ride playing on his phone. That's it. That's not support. And like Ms. Nunzio said, our legislature came down wanting to convict guilty people. And right now, the government is putting forward an injustice. And injustice anywhere threatens justice everywhere. Mike Nall, they haven't proven one thing that he has done. If you recognize throughout this trial, I have not objected, I have not crossed, I haven't done much of anything because it doesn't have Mike Nall at the center of it. It doesn't have him being an actor. It doesn't have him having knowledge. Right now, he is an innocent man being tried because Adam Fox and Barry Krall tried to use him and bolster their plan on this man's reputation, a good reputation, a fair, honest man. We'd support Ms. Nunzio, and we'd ask that you grant our motion for a directed verdict and allow this man to walk out that door with us. Thank you.
Incorporate much of that. I appreciate Mr. Seibert explaining his view after watching this trial on based on the side of the prosecution. Motive was brought up. There's no motive here by Mr. Molitor. If he's doing these tiny two little things here and making a few comments here and there to go along, just as the agents did, just as the informants did, you look at it as you can tell there's no motive. This guy would have been at every meeting. He would have been talking at the meeting. He would have been talking in the tavern. If they had a tape of him in the tavern, do you think they would have brought that in? If he's saying something. If they had a tape of him down at the boat launch, do you think they would have brought that in and throw it in his face? Absolutely. They don't exist. The evidence they put on is that undependable. Mr. Molitor did wind up by mistake in this car. He got into a car thinking he's going out to look at Black Lives Matter groups, Antifa groups. It's all consistent with what he's been doing. Security, protecting cities, and good citizenship, and he was doing good things. Those things came in on our side. We had a Facebook exhibit 20. It showed what they were doing, showed he worked in security. But he got in that car. Hey, nobody says we're going to go look at the governor's cottage to blow up a boat. And I can guarantee he wouldn't have gotten in that vehicle if that would have been told to him. He got in the car, he's stuck in the car in the back seat with two people that he thinks have guns, two people that have guns. He doesn't know Fox doesn't have a gun. He assumes he does. So he's going along with it. He can't tell if they're telling the truth, they're joking, or what's going on. And it got serious as it went up, and he's still in this car that he can't get out of. So it wasn't that he intended to jump in that car and do these things. And you can tell by the exhibit we played, the demeanor outside the house, hey guys, look at my RF device. Kind of the same thing he did at Walmart when they bugged him. Kept 3 times sending messages, bring the device, bring me the device. Never at Walmart did they say, hey, this is gonna be great because we're planning on, with the plan still going, anything about that. It's just this little toy that they're gonna bring and show off. And it wasn't even given to Fox at that time. That is so inconsequential. I think you're gonna hear that Mr. Molitor doesn't even remember that happening, but I hope we don't have to get to that stage. He's willing to testify. He didn't provide anything here. There's no motive. The motive was brought up. Is it really a question for the jury of fact when it's this weak? He's not at every single one of these meetings. He didn't go the second time on a ride. Would they bring Eyes Up again that had it? Would they bring him up when they use all of his tools he had at his house? He had those same binoculars, I think, binoculars, 2 of them in his home. They didn't go to him. He didn't offer them. No discussion. He's out in the cold. He's not trusted. He was not included in things. And he went to a simple routine training. He had there's no facts here to even come to the tough burden we have. It is like most favorable to the prosecutor. They don't even have that. The case was botched by their witnesses. They're not strong witnesses. None of them were. To call this equipment is a joke. It's a $50 item that you could buy in the back of magazines. A spy versus spy thing that Eric got for other reasons. We know he did security. He worked for a Sam. We know he went to Muskegon. We know he worked at Menards. The guy's into security. So he's not giving any legit help here. Didn't provide anything material. Toth, you know what Toth did for us? Toth told us that, hey, you could hear all this crazy bleak and not do a thing about it because you don't want to get involved. That's all Eric did. It's not a crime to not report somebody, if you could even tell it was. Dan rolled his eyes on the way back, and there's reasons Eric didn't take this forward. Toth didn't take it forward. Amanda Keller didn't take it forward for months. This guy had 2 weeks, basically a month maybe, till October 7th. He didn't go down and get the free gear. They wanted free gear. When you hop, guy loves gear. When you hopped in the car and went out for free gear, all of his actions show that he is out. This is not a conspiracy charge. This sure seemed like it. But you look back at all what might be conspiracy actions, they don't exist. This guy would have been all in. He's enthusiastic about things if he's for them, for his Second Amendment rights, his First Amendment rights he felt were, and it's not to the point of doing anything harmful or violent to somebody. That didn't come out. So there's not a motive. The facts are so low, the court can take this out of the jury's hands and should. It asked for the directed verdict, it asked for an acquittal. And that's the appropriate thing for the court to do at this time.
Thank you. It is now 3:35. I don't know how long it's going to take me to go through all of this. My apologies, but it's the speed that everyone has to wait definitely until I can go through it all and then give you my determination. I'll notify everybody obviously ahead of that, and we'll go from there. So we'll be in recess until that time. Thank you.